Hi dudes, I'm Brooke. And this is Navy. And while we may look like we dabble in the dark arts, I'm in fact not a witch. Navy I can't speak for. Hey Navy, do you put hexes on me? While we often see witches in TV, movies, and books represented as scary beings that are putting curses on people and practicing like dark, spooky arts and things like that, Wicca and other witchcraft practices are legitimate, not spooky, not scary, and a lot of people who consider themselves witches have great intents and are just following their version of religion. Like I said at the top of the video, I myself don't practice witchcraft. I don't practice any religion at all. So I'm coming at this as an outsider who's done as much research as I can for the context of telling this story correctly. So to anybody who does practice witchcraft or anything similar, if I get anything wrong in this video, I apologize in advance. I did do my best research, but if I get anything wrong, please let me know in the comments. That being said, recently an interesting TikTok came across my For You page and I was immediately very intrigued by the story, as were 14.6 million other people. So if all of those people can come to this video and watch this video and subscribe to my channel, I would really appreciate that. I'll actually give you guys a second to press subscribe. It's right under the video title next to my name. Go ahead. Do it.
Do it.
And if you guys like the very cute necklaces that I'm wearing today, they're all from Vitali and you can shop them at the link below in my description and I'll pin it in the comments as well. The TikTok in question is by a woman named Grace McAllister who tells the story of going to a hair salon that's kind of infamous on TikTok and getting what she described as a curse put on her. We'll watch that whole video in just a second, and I have heard you guys loud and clear. I won't speed it up. Just because my attention span is fried to shit, I guess it doesn't mean all of you guys' are, although you might just have Subway Surfer on under my video, but either way, 1x speed it is. But before that, let me give you guys some more lore for context. So like I said, this was an infamous TikTok hair salon. So do you remember the hairstylist Jordan of J-Palm Hairdressing who went viral for asking their clients' consent to touch them before doing their hair? People online gave them a lot of shit for this because obviously getting touched is a necessary part of getting any hair service, so it's typically a given. But I do understand what they were trying to do. Here they are briefly explaining it.
I guess a lot of you aren't really getting it. I'm trying to teach you that it's okay to say no when somebody asks for consent. This type of comment or some version or question of this is usually on most of our posts. A lot of people talk about the consent thing. And since everybody keeps bringing it up, still, let's talk about it. When we have the consent conversation before something as silly as a haircut, where it's obvious touching is going to be involved, it makes it easier to have that talk in situations where things aren't so clear. If we normalize having the consent conversation in uncomplicated scenarios, then hopefully it would compel us to take pause in unclear clear situations to ask before we touch. Or, more importantly, these obvious examples would hopefully empower somebody to confidently say no in situations where it matters the most. And nobody should be forced to do anything, including getting a haircut, when they feel uncomfortable.
Anyway, they went really viral for that practice when they would post their consultations a while back. Okay, so take that information and store it in your back pocket. Or if you're a woman and your pockets are too small to hold anything, store it in the handbag that you now have to carry. Fast forward to June 22nd, where Grace posts her story about her experience. This is the TikTok I first saw. She doesn't name J-Palm specifically in this TikTok, but people in the comments immediately asked if it was J-Palm based on her description, and she was quick to immediately confirm that yes, it was. Okay, so let's watch Grace's first video first.
Put your finger down if you went to get a haircut last year and instead maybe you got a voodoo curse put on you. I recorded this video so many times a year ago, and I had drafts that I don't have anymore, but I never posted it because I was genuinely terrified because of the just stupid crazy shit that happened, that I was like, if I talk about it, will they come after me? I don't know, but I'm gonna talk about it now because it's been a year and I just remembered that the drafts are gone, and I want people to know, but I won't say where it is unless you guys tell me that I should. But my parents told me at the time that like they could sue me for defamation if I say what happened. So please advise me.
I just immediately have to say, her parents are fucking stupid for thinking that. Because it's not defamation if it's true. You can say your bad experience about something, or you can say something negative about somebody or something like that if it's true. So that's what defamation is. Not to shit on this person's parents, but it's funny.
So what happened is I've only ever had my hair cut by my mom in my kitchen, and I wanted to get a real haircut because my mom hasn't been a practicing cosmetologist in over like 2 decades. And so my friend sent me this business TikTok and was like, here's an all-inclusive place that seems really friendly and cool for a first haircut. And I was like, awesome, this place looks great. And they're very well known on TikTok and made fun of for certain thing that they do about their all-inclusiveness, okay? They cater specifically to the queer community. And I went, and it was great. Like my first appointment was great. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, this is really cool. This is really cool. And then I get home and I look at it because when the haircut was finished, they just had me pay and leave. I didn't really get a chance to put my fingers through it and see if it was right.
I just want to say, obviously, I'm going to let her finish, and I know the whole story. So just, my commentary comes with the fact that I know the whole story. Also, if you are new here, I did used to be a hairstylist. I was only a practicing hairstylist for like 2 or 3 years, I think. I would have to do the math to figure out exactly how long, but I do have a cosmetology license. So I do know hair more than, the next guy. So I do come at this as someone who took hair clients regularly. And immediately I do have a red flag of a possibly unpleasable or maybe annoying client, in that her mom had been doing her hair for however long, and she hasn't gotten a real haircut, as she says, in so long. And that could lead to not having the correct expectations, or not knowing what to expect, and not having experience with a consultation, and then seeing that consultation into an actual haircut can kind of lead to disappointment. Every time as a client you have a consultation with your hairstylist, you usually bring photos, most people do, and things like that. So I know a lot of clients can have an expectation that their hair is going to look exactly the same as their inspo pics or things, of that nature. And expectations can kind of be like a joy killer, because your hair is a different head of hair than the person whose inspo pic that is. And sometimes there's even editing and stuff. For example, platinum blondes will often bring in an inspo pic and it's been desaturated to shit, and you look in the background and nothing has color, and it's well, they don't even have that shade, So that's kind of the main thing that could be an issue when you're going into a consultation, having not had your hair done professionally in so long. Just if I was the hairstylist, I would have a thought of oh gosh, I hope she doesn't think that because I'm a professional hairstylist who's actively practicing and has been actively practicing, as opposed to her mom who hasn't practiced in 20 some years and is cutting her hair in her kitchen, that I'm gonna be able to work magic, you know? So immediately for me, if, you know, putting myself in the hairstylist shoes, that would be kind of like a pink flag, you know? Not so much like a red flag, but I would be like, okay, be on the lookout to make sure that we're super, super clear in the consultation, because she's been getting her hair done at home and it's her mom. So if it's your mom, oftentimes you could probably say like, no, don't do that, you know, whereas to a hairstylist, you have to be a little more polite. You just met this person. That would be something I would look out for. As well as she also mentions here like, oh, I got my hair cut and then I was like, you know, let's pay and get out. And I do understand if you're feeling like you were rushed out of the salon and not felt like you can take your time and you feel welcome. But I do also understand on the hairstylist perspective, like time is money, honestly, unfortunately, and you only have so long booked for that haircut. And if a person is like, in the mirror for, you know, 10 to 15 minutes or however long, you don't have time for that. And J-Palm Hairstyling, from what I could tell online, just has Jordan, the owner, working there. So it's not like there's a bunch of hairstylists that are taking clients. It's a single person's hair, you know, studio. So it's not like a big giant salon where you have a billion people coming in and out. It's a one client at a time situation. So it might be like, okay, we have someone coming up or someone waiting or something. So let's go get to that next person. And can that make you feel rushed as a client? Totally get that. But I think Grace might be guilty here of looking back and like picking out, you know, things to be mad about because she's mad about something else. And these things aren't necessarily super big issues, you know, like, oh, they rushed me out. And it's like, well, you know, they probably had a client waiting. So not to negate whatever else she has to say.
And there were some things that were wrong about it. And so I messaged them and I was like, hey, can we get a touch up? And they were like, sure. And I go in and they spend like the entire time being like, I actually did this right. Like you're wrong, but we'll alter it for you.
Okay, I'm gonna talk more about that part in a second because Grace does have a follow-up video to this and she goes more into detail about what she considered wrong about the haircut. And just know that, in my opinion, I think the miscommunication here between Grace and Jordan, the hairstylist, is that Grace is saying like, you did this wrong, as opposed to saying like, I don't like the way this part turned out. And Jordan, I don't know, I wasn't there. But I would imagine if I were Jordan, I would have said like, well, no, you asked for this and I gave you this, but it's okay, I'll fix it. It seems like that might be the conversations they were having just based off of what Grace is telling us. That seems to be kind of like the way those conversations went. So it does kind of seem like Grace was a very picky, like unpleasable client, to be honest. But again, I'll let her finish and I'll explain more about what I mean by saying that, you know, Jordan did something wrong when they didn't. So I'll explain that in a second. It's more with the second video that Grace posted. Also keep in mind that Jordan doesn't have to give her what's effectively a second haircut. A touch up or a trim or any of these things are just different ways to say haircut, you know, like it takes just as long as a haircut a lot of times, if not longer, when your client's unhappy and you need to fix something. So now Jordan's effectively having to give her 2 haircuts for the price of 1. So I think that's worth noting that that was inherently a kind thing to do that Jordan didn't need to do.
When I went back, the normal eclectic stuff that they had before, like all the picture frames and stuff up on the wall, was still there, but they had added some Halloween decorations. And when I asked them, hey, did you decorate for Halloween 5 months early? Because it was almost like a year ago today. It was like June 10th, July 10th, I think. And they were like, no. That's all we talked about it.
Grace is gonna list all of the things that scared her and made her feel like she had a hex put on her. And I will do my best to explain from what I understand what each one of those things is.
But when I walked in the room, there was a giant sign that says, abandon hope, all ye who enter.
Okay, first she shows us the abandon all hope, ye who enter sign. This is like the most famous quote from Dante's Inferno. It's not necessarily a real warning. Like, it's probably just that Jordan's a fan of Dante's Inferno, and a lot of people have signs that say that. I'm a spooky decor girl myself, so, you know. So if someone walked in and was like, did you decorate for Halloween? I'd be like, no. Also, she does kind of make it sound like the abandon all hope sign was added just for this appointment, and it was not. As you can see on J-Palm's YouTube videos, it's been up for a really long time in their salon, and it's like just part of the decor.
And there was a ring of salt around my chair, and there was salt in front of the mirror in front of me and on the countertop in front of me.
Okay, so the salt around the chair and on the countertop and things like that, I can completely understand how, you know, if you just walked into a hair salon expecting to get your hair cut, that would spook you if you didn't know anything about like Wicca or witchcraft or anything like that. I also, for the record, don't know Jordan's, you know, religious practices or practices in general surrounding any of this stuff. I'm just talking in general about what Grace is discussing in this video and like what that can represent. So I don't presume to know Jordan's, you know, religious practices or anything of the sort. But upon research, in Wicca, salt can be associated with purification, with protection, and with the earth element. And a salt circle specifically can be used as a means of a protective barrier from a number of things, one of those things being negative energy.
And there was a mirror behind me that had a giant pentagram covering the entirety of it. There was a pentagram on the floor in front of me, 3 pentagrams in the corner of the mirror in front of me.
The pentagram has long been misunderstood as some kind of evil symbol. The pentagram is a symbol of the 5 elements, and it's used in Wicca as protection, from what I understand.
And next to that line of salt on the countertop was some candles and voodoo doll looking things.
And then as far as the candles and what Grace calls a voodoo doll, we'll get into the voodoo thing in a second because someone does call Grace out for using that term when voodoo is a closed religion. From the research that I did, that figure looks more like a puppet, which is used in Wicca for a multitude of things. And again, this is all just me, you know, doing my own research online. But from what I could tell, the fact that it's wrapped in a blue cloth and bound with what looks like natural fiber would lead one to believe that the intent of that puppet was for protection, health, or tranquility, although it depends what's inside of it.
There's also a skeleton. I think the skeleton may have been there during the first appointment. I think that might have just been part of their decor. But it ties in, so I really don't know.
And again, as with the abandon all hope sign, the skeleton is a part of their decor all the time. They even feature it in some, like, you know, Instagram reels and things like that. And you can see it in the background of some of their TikToks and some of their YouTube content as well. So no, that also was not put out just for Grace's follow-up appointment.
But so like the vibe when I walked into the fix appointment was just hate. It was just hate, and I felt so uncomfortable. And then halfway through the appointment, they left to go to the bathroom. Now, in the first appointment, they left to go to the bathroom as soon as I got there, which I thought was odd that they hadn't gone already. But you know, I don't care. You do your thing. But the second appointment was 10 minutes long. So I don't know why they had to leave halfway through, except for the fact that when they left, the music switched from being like pop music or elevator music to the kind of music you would hear in a haunted house where it's like whisper chanting in a different language. Yeah, and then it went back to normal as soon as they came back in the room.
Listen, I don't want to reach, but I do think it's interesting language to consider like a different language spooky and then to say like it went back to normal, you know? I'm probably reaching there because given the context of what she's saying, I understand what she means, but it is kind of a weird way to say that, I will say. Also, it's editing, Brooke, but I just realized, is it possible that when Jordan went to use the restroom, they played something on their phone and it was the music that Grace heard, and that music was like a TikTok or something, and it like auto-played because of the Bluetooth setup in the salon? I don't know, just something to think about.
And they were cutting my hair really quickly the whole time, and so quickly they snagged the scissors on my hair for a second and like pulled my hair really hard. And then when they finished, they literally go, all right, you're done, you gotta go, I've got a client coming, and like walk me out the door and close it behind me.
Well, yeah, it's a touch-up appointment that they're doing for free. So like, it makes sense that they would be quick in between probably 2 booked clients. Like, you probably came in between 2 clients that were already booked. You know, that's usually how people will book like a quick touch-up or something like that, where it's like you give them a quick 10 minutes and I'll quickly do it. The bathroom comment is funny because it just feels like out of touch to be like, I just got here and you're gonna go to the bathroom. Like, yeah, they probably had a client that just left right before you and they had to like get them situated. Now you're here. They're gonna quickly use the restroom and then help you out. Like, God forbid someone's a human being. So I do think that's kind of an interesting, you know, like look into a teensy bit of entitlement, to be honest.
And I essentially immediately start bawling, and I call my friend and I'm like, what the fuck? And I call my dad and I'm like, I'm coming home. Like, I'm sorry it's taking so long, but I need to have a breakdown first. And it's weird because I didn't think that they weren't threatening me with like scissors or something like that, but they are holding scissors next to my face, and there's all this threatening stuff around and the threatening music. And I just felt very uncomfortable and unsafe the entire time that I was there for that second appointment. And I wanted to post a review somewhere about it and be like, hey, this place is not chill. But my parents told me that they could sue me for defamation. So I have not said anything about it, because if they are gonna put a voodoo hex on me or something, who's gonna stop them from doing normal crazy stuff? And I don't really believe in like hexes or anything like that, but that's not the point though. That's not the point. The point is that their intention is bad, and that scares me. So if you guys want to know where it was, or if you have any guesses on where it was, let me know. But yeah. Also, if you want to see the haircut, the haircut is not like the end of the world, but it was not at all what I was going for. And I was more crying because I was freaked the fuck out than that the haircut was terrible, which it was bad. It was very uneven and very... Anyway, let me know what you think.
Sounds like a lot of
Pearl clutching
over a little
witchcraft.
right.
So there were people in Grace's comments bringing up the fact that she used voodoo when she should not have, and she did respond with this video where she also shows us the haircut and explains a little bit more about the story.
I want to clarify some things from my last video because it got a lot more attention than I was expecting, and I made a mistake when talking about it, and I'm sure there are other things that I can clarify, so I'm going to do that now. First of all, this is the mistake I made. I don't know anything about voodoo, hoodoo, witchcraft, hexes, spells, anything like that. I should not have been using terms that I do not even partially understand, so I apologize for probably putting that in a light that it did not deserve to be in. I simply meant to say that the objects that they had in the room that weren't there before, and the music that they played that they did not play before, reminded me of things that would either be Halloween decorations or things you would see in a Halloween movie where they're going to put a spell or something on somebody. I did not realize that the verbiage that I used was so specific to an actual thing. In my mind, it's just Halloween stuff. So I apologize for my ignorance on that subject. And thank you to this person for being so kind while educating me about these things that I clearly know nothing about. There were a lot of people that were less kind, so I very much appreciate this person. As for the objects themselves and the music, they do not actually scare me, bother me, upset me, offend me, whatever else. It was not the things in the music that actually bothered me. It was more the fact that in the first appointment that I had, the stylist was very friendly and very cordial and customer service attitude and all that. And in the second appointment, in my the follow-up, the touch-up appointment, I don't think they smiled a single time. They were very hostile. They didn't seem like they wanted me there at all. It was just a very hostile environment. And so when you add a bunch of items that I don't understand that are associated with Halloween type stuff, and add in getting a very upsetting haircut with a bunch of hostility on top of it, is just a very unsettling, uncomfortable experience. No hate against the objects or anything themselves. A lot of you wanted to know what the haircut actually was. This is what I walked in with. I had blow dried it or straightened it beforehand because I asked what to do and they said do whatever. But I showed them this so they know what my hair texture was, and this was the length. It went just below my butt crack. It was very, very long. It's just about as long as it was then, now. It took about a year to grow back out. What I had asked for was some little face framing pieces to come out when I put my hair up, and that when I put my hair back behind me, some pieces fall out over my shoulder, like this does, which, by the way, I have since cut my own hair. I cut my own hair after that appointment, or after the touch-up appointment. So any video or picture that you have seen is not the haircut. And then I asked to get maybe 6 inches off the bottom max so that I got rid of some split ends. that is what I asked for, and these are the pictures that I had showed them.
Keep in mind, she does say 6 inches off the bottom max I asked for, just to get off some split ends. And then she goes like this when she says 6 inches. And she also mentions that it took a year for it to grow back to where it was. Everybody's hair grows at a slightly different rate, but overall, the average growth rate for hair is about a half an inch a month. So if it's been 12 months, it likely was 6 inches that was cut. I think she might be confused on inches, to be honest, because holding your hand up like this and saying 6 inches just to get rid of the split ends, 6 inches, that's like 3 inches. Hold on. This is 6 inches. So that's like, it's a chop. Like, that's a pretty good chop. And she had really, really long, like, beautiful hair. So I understand, like, a big chop might be just getting the split ends off, but just keeping that in mind.
At the appointment, at the end, they asked me if I wanted it in a blowout or styled normally, so I got a blowout to feel fancy. I didn't realize until I got home what the situation was, because when we finished with the blowout, we immediately went to pay and I left. I should have checked. I didn't know better. That was my bad. When I got home, I realized that the face framing pieces that I had gotten were very thick, to the point where I would consider them curtain bangs. They got very hostile with me about calling them curtain bangs and told me countless times that they are face framing pieces and we will make your face framing pieces blended more, but they are not curtain bangs. They were very, very adamant about it.
It is very annoying, and I know I'm kind of dogpiling on Grace right now. I'll get to Jordan in a second, but it is very annoying when someone mansplains your profession to you, because those are not curtain bangs. They are face framing pieces. So a curtain bang is more like, think Sabrina Carpenter. She's got just bangs and then hair. What she just showed us is face framing pieces that might, granted, be thicker than she wanted and thicker than she asked for, totally granted, but face framing pieces nonetheless. And they then blend down into the layers, which is what makes them face framing pieces, because they're little pieces that are shorter than the rest, but then they continue to blend down in layers that frame the face. So I can understand why, if a client's already giving you a hard time and driving you crazy, and it's your salon that you own, and it doesn't matter if they come back because, like, you're the boss, if they're like insisting that they're called curtain bangs and you're the professional, I can understand why you'd be like, no, they're not. You know, I can understand how that's fucking annoying.
Oh yeah, so the face framing pieces were really thick. They were not cohesive with the rest of the hair or with the layers. The layers, I don't remember if they were uneven in the first appointment or not. But then the bottom, instead of being the same shape that it was before, it was a coffin shape. And instead of being just a coffin shape, it went like this, and then it went down a little bit, and then it went back.
Yeah, I can see how it does have kind of a disconnect there. That's valid.
I noticed all these things when I washed my hair and styled it naturally. And that's when I was like, okay, I actually do want to get the touch up. Now, it's not a terrible cut, okay? It's just not at all what I had asked for or what I wanted. So this is not a bad haircut necessarily. It's just not what I asked for. So I went back in, and like I said, the whole attitude was different. They had added these things that I don't know anything about. And they did not smile the entire time. They were very hostile. They just seemed like they were upset with me and they didn't want me to be there. Which, if I did something to upset them, I really don't know. I thought that I was being just a nice, normal person. And I keep licking my lips because I ate a shit ton of tortilla chips. I thought I should put that out there. I'm trying really hard not to. What was I saying? Okay, so that touch-up appointment was very hostile. I asked them, hey, is this Halloween decorations you put out early? And they said no, and kept doing their thing. They didn't seem like they wanted to talk about it, so I didn't ask anymore. A lot of people were like, you should have left when you first saw that stuff. I'm afraid to be rude, and I wasn't bothered by the stuff. I was like, maybe they're in a bad mood and things are gonna get better. I don't know. The appointment, they were cutting my hair very haphazardly. It was very fast. It felt very random. They ended up cutting off at least 6 more inches off my hair. So instead of 6 inches, I lost like a foot, maybe a foot and a half.
Okay, first of all, you don't know what's haphazard for someone or just quick. And if you are someone who cuts hair all day, every day, you can work really quickly. And doing especially layers, it does look haphazard. Like when you're doing long hair layers, a lot of the times like you pull it up and then it's like it looks really haphazard, but there's a method to the madness. So again, I take issue with Grace's like tone of knowing about hair when she doesn't seem to, and calling things like that into question when her biggest issue is just she didn't like her haircut. That's fine. You haven't gotten a haircut outside of your kitchen in years, you said. So, you know, people cut hair differently, and that's a pretty typical way to cut hair, is really quickly layer like that. Looking at this photo that she shows and claiming it's 1.5 feet is crazy work. I'd give her maybe tops 8 inches. And is that more than she asked for off? Yes, totally. But again, it feels like she has valid criticisms and valid concerns, but we're just like really exaggerating and really dogpiling about something that's like, well, that's not.
Oh, that's no. In the sense that, no. You know what I mean? Like, when
You know, like, this is a man's 12.5 inches, if you know what I mean. And again, back to hair growth, you're not growing 12.5 inches in a year. That's crazy. So it likely was closer to like 6 to 8 inches that was cut, which again, if it was more than 6 inches, that is more than she asked for. But this isn't 12 to 18 inches off.
And it ended up being way choppier than it was before. The blending was a little bit better, but it became closer to the haircut that I wanted, but less of a good haircut. It was not good, and they practically held my hand and dragged me out the door. That's an exaggeration. They ushered me to the door and closed it immediately behind my back, where I then started bawling like a child. But this is what it looked like afterwards. I don't know if I'm going to put in a video or pictures or something, but it was not great. I ended up straightening it later.
I want to know, she does say that she had blow dried it straight before she went in, but I want to know if it was a wet or a dry cut, and I want to know if it was a wet cut, that would make it like a curly wet cut because she does have like a curl pattern. But because she does have curly hair, when you're cutting curly hair, it's always gonna look a little bit different when it's straightened. So like if you wear your hair curly 24/7 and like every once in a while you straighten it, but like 90% of the time it's curly, usually it would be advised that you get a curly haircut because, you know, you cut it as it's gonna be worn so that you don't end up like cutting it while it's straight and then the coils make it uneven when they set in, if that makes sense. So your curl pattern can kind of make it look uneven when it's not, if it was cut straight when it's straight. Whereas if it was cut when it's curly and it's like a straight, perfect, you know, line or whatever, when it's curly and it's all even and nice, and then you straighten it, then it's going to look uneven because, again, your curl pattern isn't exactly perfect and it's going to have, you know, differences. So I would like to know if it was a wet or a dry cut for that reason, because a wet cut in her case would be a curly type of cut, and a dry cut, she did say she came in with straightened to a degree hair.
Well, people ask me if bad things happen to me afterwards. I don't really believe in this stuff or any stuff specifically, so I don't associate anything. But I did almost get in a car accident when someone cut me off in traffic, and then I went home, straightened my hair, and burned my hand on the iron. But I think that those are unrelated, and even if they are related, they're really small, so I'm fine. But I straightened my hair, and it looked worse than I had thought that it did. Once again, it could have been so much worse, but I lost a lot more hair than I intended, and it wasn't a good haircut in general, and it was not the service that I was supposed to receive, in my opinion. So that's really all I have to say about it. I ended up going home, having my mom try and help me. She couldn't fix it, she couldn't fix it as much as it should have been, so I ended up fixing it myself and have since been cutting my hair by myself. So any video or picture you've seen of me has not been that haircut. This is what it's been. If there are any more questions or things that I need to clarify, I'm sure they will be in the comments. Let me know. I also want to say this is not supposed to be like a hate on this establishment. I just had a very bad experience there, and this is my story about it. And yeah, hopefully everybody else has had a great experience. Oh, they never asked me, by the way, my pronouns or consent to touch me, which I thought was really strange because it's in like all of their videos. It didn't bother me though, because you can call me whatever you can. I went in to get a haircut, so I really don't care. Yeah, that's it.
So yeah, I do think that I understand not liking your haircut. I understand being disappointed with your haircut. I just think her criticisms of the haircut breach on thinking she knows more about hair than she does, and that bothers me. But that's not to say that she can't be disappointed by her haircut. And now to J-Palm, because I know I haven't said anything about their part in this at all yet, and it might seem like I'm just like glazing them. I'm not. While my research led me to believe that everything that was in her video in the salon that day was either usually there, like the decor, or the things that were specifically added that day were healing related, or like protection from negative energy, I still don't think it's appropriate to put any religion in a service industry like that. Unless you explicitly like let clients know ahead of time that that's gonna be part of it. It would really bother me if I sat down for a haircut and my hairdresser started praying over me. That would really fucking bother me. And what's ironic is that Jordan rose to kind of TikTok infamy for asking for consent before touching any of their clients in the consultations and in the appointments, but they didn't ask Grace's consent to be a part of a religious situation that clearly made her very uncomfortable. So while I do think a lot of Grace's discomfort comes from the fact that she doesn't know what all of these things were for and assumed the worst because of the way it's portrayed in media, it doesn't change the fact that you shouldn't be putting your religion on people like that. But I will say, you have to be a really negative fucking client for them to put a salt circle around you to protect themselves from your negative energy. And of course, because TikTok is the way it is, people chose a side and attacked the other side. And given that people already would make fun of Jordan for the consent thing, it made them an easy target to kind of get really made fun of for this too. So now Jordan's comments are full of people making jokes about them being a witch and asking if they're gonna address it and saying that like they're a terrible person for putting a hex on this poor girl and like kind of crazy things. Also, aside from just like the comments about like, oh my gosh, you're a witch or whatever, people were also attacking Jordan's appearance and like mannerisms in their comments and basically saying like, oh, nothing behind those eyes. You can tell that like they're crazy because of the way they smile and like wild accusations like that.
It's such a good question. I've been growing it out forever and I've really only ever gone in and just said, I want to keep growing it and have some layers. But that's all it's ever been is long. So some sort of style, I'm not opposed to like losing some length. Something that leans a little bit more feminine would be lovely. I kind of have a couple.
And can I just say, like, first of all, they are filming. So they're filming, they know that they're being filmed because they started the filming, and also they have their like customer service face on. So if you're someone who's worked in customer service, you already have a layer of like fakeness about you, and then to add on the fact that you're being filmed, it's like, yeah, of course you're gonna present as like, you know, like you're gonna have an air of like fakeness because you're in your customer service job and you're also being filmed. And also everybody in their comments all the time, even before this, judges every single thing they do, always. So I'm sure that there is an air of like, okay, like just masking their nervousness about like, if I fuck up at all or do anything weird, everybody in my fucking comment section is gonna completely crucify me for it. So let's lay off commenting on the way that people like are. And people have even gone as far as leaving 1-star reviews on their Google reviews for their hair salon. Like, for example, this person says, "This is a warning rather than a review. Hair isn't the only thing they practice here. Stay safe and consider a new hair place." You can't make a review of somewhere you haven't been. That's fucked up. And then this person says, "After asking for a minor touch-up, my hairdresser was extremely disrespectful and essentially pushed me out the door upon completion. Just go somewhere else. The attitude is not worth it." And then this person said, "Is it normal to come back in to fix a haircut and have this on a mirror after? Was not there before appointment. Also had this sign all over top of hairdressing mirror and salt around chair." And presumably they had attached photos that weren't like approved by Google to be posted or whatever, because there was no photo attached. Those are just a few, but there are countless reviews on JPalm Hairdressing's Google page just like shitting on them for something that these people weren't there for. Also worth noting that people are in Jordan's comments being like, "Jesus Christ, guide me and I rebuke this. Please protect me from this energy. Amen." And it's like, you clicked on the profile. Like, no one's making you watch the video. If you think you're gonna get a demon from the video, like, don't watch it. So given all the backlash that JPalm was getting, Grace makes another video telling people to stop harassing Jordan. And she even has in her bio now something along the lines of like, "Stop harassing JPalm" or something like that.
I'm seeing that there are a lot of people who came from my comments and went to JPalm's comments and posted things like "Justice for Grace" or "a hamster with a cross" or "a person in a witch costume." And as much as I appreciate the Justice for Grace thing, it's been a year. I'm fine. You know, I had a bad experience, but I don't believe in an eye for an eye. I don't think that just because I had a bad experience, they should have a bad experience. So if they want to talk about it, they can say something about it. Other than that, let's just leave them alone. And as for the pictures and the let's not do that. You know, it seems funny at first because you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's a silly little picture." But having someone in your comments posting a bunch of silly little pictures making fun of you and calling you things that may or may not be accurate and saying all sorts of, it's bullying, harassment, perhaps. I'm not sure, but either way, if I were them, I would not appreciate it in my comments. So if we could lay off, that would be great. Let's try and be kind in both comment sections, perhaps. Speaking of which, there are some people saying that my apology was insincere because they've seen me liking comments that are saying that I didn't need to apologize. As for that, my apology was sincere. I promise. I didn't realize that voodoo and other things was a legitimate religion. I have only seen Halloween movies. I don't know anything about these religions. I didn't know. My apology is sincere, I promise. That said, I am liking comments that are saying things about, "You didn't know any better. I understand that was not your intention." A lot of these comments are also saying that I didn't need to apologize because of that, but the reason I'm liking the comment is because I appreciate the fact that they're being kind towards my ignorance. Whereas other people are just saying that I'm ignorant and therefore a racist or a bigot. I appreciate that they're understanding enough to know that I'm not a racist or a bigot. I'm just stupid and trying to learn. So, that's all I have to say on that. In the end, let's just try and be more understanding and nice to both me and to JPalm, because I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Let's just, the whole be kind movement is there for a reason. It's a very simple thing to do. Let's try it.
And I do think it's kind of rich to get online being like, "You guys, why are you all being so mean to this person that I told you did this horrible thing to me?" Come on, it's TikTok. You know that if you post a story that's sensational like this and it gains traction, that everybody that agrees with you is gonna go dog shit on that person. And it's just really ignorant to be like, "Oh, I'll just post my thing." And then, people will understand my side of the story and feel bad for me, but nobody will go attack that person. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous to be like, "Why are you guys harassing them? Be nice. We can both have our views." That's not the way the internet works. So I think it's a little bit like, what did you expect? Like, don't play dumb. People did have a lot to say about this. So here are some of the TikToks that other creators were making about the situation.
They think they are. I've given the best years of my life to this place and they think they can just fire me like that? Like trash? I don't think so.
That one's my favorite. That's really funny.
There's no way in hell this is $5 million. Well, fuck me in the ass, this is $5 million.
I really want that hairdresser, J-Palm, to respond to all these witchcraft comments. Some girl posted a video about an experience that she had with this really popular hairstylist creator. And I love her videos. Her consultations are like amazing. And some people make fun of her because she like goes way in depth with these consultations, but it's good. Like everyone should do that. Because by the end of it, it's very clear that both of them are on the same page. Which is why if this girl who made this video saying that she didn't like her hair after she got home and asked her to redo it, and then when she went in to redo it, there was all this like witchcraft stuff, like salt around the chair, pentagram, Halloween-y type music. And she was like, I think she put a hex on me. But I don't think she put a hex. And some people said like, well, maybe she does believe in witchcraft, but she was just like protecting herself. And like maybe, or maybe she just thought it was funny. Maybe this girl was being like overly dramatic and like crazy about her hair. You know, just one of those, if you've ever worked in customer service, just like one of those people who is never going to be happy. And I don't know, I wasn't there. That's just another theory. Or maybe it had nothing to do with her. Like, who knows? But I would really like her to respond. I don't know, just to get her take on it.
Worth noting that Jordan uses they, them pronouns. I don't think that guy knew. That is another fair point that, like, all of that stuff could have had nothing to do with Grace. Like, they had a client coming in right after Grace. So, like, what do you think? They, like, swept it all up and got rid of everything that quickly? Like, maybe they just had a thing going on that day that was, you know, I don't know if there was, like, a full moon or what. I don't know enough about, you know, witchcraft to know if there's like a special day where you do certain things. Do I still think it should be kept out of like a customer service environment unless it's specifically like consented to ahead of time? But it's interesting. People are mad that Jordan isn't responding, but I don't blame them because like they can't say anything that would win. You know, if they say, yes, I practice witchcraft, everybody's gonna freak out about that. If they say, no, I don't, this is a misunderstanding, nobody's gonna believe them. There's no winning. So I don't really know if it's worth it to respond at this point. Kind of just keeps people coming back to their page to check to see if there is a response, I guess. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. I probably will always lean a little bit on the hairstylist side in any story that's like hairstylist versus client. But I do want to know what everybody thinks. So also, like I said, if you practice witchcraft in any capacity and you know more about these items that were shown in that video than I said, obviously, let me know. I would love to know more about, you know, these practices and what they could have represented in this scenario. All right, guys, I'm gonna call it right there. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Let's be friends. And if you want to support me even further and get some behind the scenes polls and even more like exclusive content, I
What's your Bluetooth voice?
Bluetooth paired. The really deep, the airy, battery low.
Battery low.
Yeah, yo, so you have the higher one.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so good. Okay, yeah.
Hello, Kristen. Battery connected.
Hi, Tawny. Bluetooth paired. Yeah.
Are we paired now?
We're paired whether you like it or not.
Hi, Kristen. Your Bluetooth
The one-night relationship theory.
Page Prince theory.
$100 bill dating theory.
The love theory.
The April relationship theory.
The October theory.
The green light theory.
The Instagram theory.
The March theory.
Theory.
Hi dudes, I'm Brooke, and I love my husband. We've been together for just about 10 years and married for 3, and while in the grand scheme of things this may not be very long, I'd say we've put the time in. Do you agree, Leighton?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Alright, now get the fuck out of here, I'm filming.
Hi.
Anyway, now that I've relationship mogged all of you, I can get to the point of the video. Social media seems to have an endless supply of theories regarding romantic relationships. Whether they're to see if your partner even likes you, to see if you guys are going to last, or to diagnose an issue that didn't exist before you opened TikTok, the odds of stumbling across one of these relationship theories is ever increasing. One too many swipes and you're divorced. You may think your relationship is safe, and I did, until I found out that there was a theory specifically targeting people like me.
I call this the Aura Riz theory. So basically the theory is no one person needs both aura and Riz.
So now I can't have aura, Riz, and a loving marriage? I can't turn this off, man. While a lot of these relationship theories on social media seem to be made with good intentions, some don't. Some actually come from really shitty people with really fucked up worldviews that they may be hiding under the guise of relationship. Advice. And while relationship theories aren't anything new, they are easier than ever to share and discuss. So while they've been around as long as zodiac signs and numerology, they used to live in like magazines and blogs. But with apps like TikTok and Reels that function off of an algorithm-based feed where you don't choose what the next video you see is, you just swipe into a surprise, it's easy for ideas like this to go viral. And the big difference is that before, when you put the magazine down, you could just move on. But with apps like TikTok, if the algorithm senses that you lingered a little too long on one video, it'll feed you a similar one. And so on. Which is why my entire Reels feed is that little emoji clapping his cheeks. I can't help it, I love that guy. My first memory of hearing about these types of like relationship theories on social media was in 2020 when the green line theory went viral. Of course, 2020 was the perfect breeding ground for this. A lot of us had to shelter in place and in turn were kind of forced to spend significantly more time with our partners, and TikTok had just been massively adopted by the public as a way to curb the boredom of being home by watching people dance to Savage by Megan Thee Stallion and talk about Tiger King. With all of this time alone with their partners, a lot of people started consuming relationship content to help them validate, find understanding, or diagnose their problems. Which I think is partially why the green line theory went viral then. The other reason being that people couldn't help but test their own relationships.
Oftentimes, I'm asked to present an example of someone who passes the green line with flying colors. Yesterday, international football star Ilkay Gundogan, who just won the Premier League and Champions League with Man City, showed us the best example I've seen in a while. This right here is what it's all about. A happy family, a happy couple. He's straight, she's leaning in. Look at, they have a baby.
So this creator's name is Jack Mack, which sounds like he panicked and made it up on the spot, or like a Burger King McDonald's collab, but he has a following because he works at Barstool Sports. So already off to a great start there. But so far, you might just assume that he's giving us a body language breakdown of this apparently famous athlete. I say apparently because if you can't tell by literally everything about me, I don't follow sports. So let's hear him out.
For those that enjoy the advanced levels of the Green Line Theory classes 201, 301, 401, you will see that her box is pointed towards him, so it's no longer in transit.
So personally, I don't enjoy advanced levels of the green line theory, so maybe that's why this isn't grabbing me. But based on the fact that he started off by immediately talking about what direction her box is facing, I can imagine that he's gonna have some absolutely groundbreaking and intellectually profound and not at all misogynistic takes about the way that this couple that he's never met is standing in a photo. In all seriousness, asserting that the way that she's facing shows that she's no longer in transit is an insane take. She's not an object. The way that Jack talks about it sounds as if the way that she's posing is her signaling to the world that her husband owns her, and she's no longer going from man to man, you know, because beforehand her box was in transit. In reality, she's definitely just posing in a way that's comfortable for her with her family. So obviously, this analogy that her box is no longer in transit being used, when it's clearly a shipping term that we're all familiar with when tracking a delivery, instantly raised a red flag for this guy. First off, Jack made the decision to never mention the wife by name. Again, not a sports person, so I had to look them up. Her name is Sarah, and she's a very successful TV presenter and model. And Jack choosing to leave her unnamed and then refer to her box no longer in transit reduces her to a sexual object being shipped from one man to the next, instead of acknowledging her as her own person, a very successful person at that. And this is something to look out for in these theories in general. This simplified language is actually incredibly loaded in a way that seems to sort of be baby steps to red pill content, especially since, while all types of people engaged heavily with this theory, it definitely feels aimed at cis men from a cis male point of view. I mean, the guy works at fucking Barstool.
She is smiling, and her hand placement is very, very good. Some will say this is a mini claw, but I don't think so.
I don't know what a mini claw is, and it never gets explained in the videos I saw, by the way, and that's killing me because all I can think of is the little, like, mini hand in Scary Movie 2.
Also, she is kind of pulling him in, but he's not letting it happen. She enjoys this dynamic. She enjoys the friction. This is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful family. Mashallah to this family.
I think we can all safely assume where this is going. He's a fucking weirdo misogynist. I know. Not the Barstool Sports guy. Also, why is he assuming that she's pulling and he isn't letting it happen? It certainly looks to me like they're just different heights and they're trying to get situated where the three of their faces are somewhat close together. And saying that she enjoys the friction of this dynamic that he just fully invented for them is so fucking bizarre. This is literally fan fiction at this point, and it's completely made up. It's giving like fanboy stan of the football player. He's painting this like weird fantasy in his head of him being an alpha male who has full control in the people in his life. I imagine if Sarah saw this video, she likely would be really grossed out, and if Ilkay heard the way that this guy was speaking about his wife, he would likely hate him and think he's a loser. It's a super strange and cringe thing to get online and preach, unless it represents your worldview that you insist on training others on, which is definitely red pill training wheels. Also, is it just me, or is the angle that Jack is filming from kind of like an optical illusion? It almost looks like he's laying on his back and we're laying over looking down at him, or kind of the opposite, like he's leaning over and we're looking up at him. It reminds me of that Mr. Beast meme where we're waking up after sharing an intimate moment with him. I can't tell who's leaning over who. And speaking of Mr. Beast, we're still working together to beat Mr. Beast for feminism by my birthday, February 9th. I just checked, and as of this morning, he does still currently have more subscribers than me, which is inherently misogynistic, of course. Hashtag sharks bite beasts, guys. We can do it. Please subscribe. Anyway, by now you're probably agreeing with me that this guy's a fucking weirdo, or you might be thinking, I don't know, seems like a stretch after one video. And to that I say, don't worry. Jack made like a lot of follow-up videos about this same theory. Here's another.
explain the Green Line Test Part 2. I'm answering all the big questions that you guys have about it. The Green Line Test is basically founded around the fact that men can't lean in, but women can.
Surely there's some gray area to this, and men can sometimes lean in, right? After all, men are attracted to their girlfriends and wives, and surely should be allowed to show said affection in their body language.
So women can lean in, but men can't? Yes, exactly. 100% exactly. And this goes back to the fact that women find strong men attractive.
This is one of my favorite things when men speak for women about what we find attractive. Also, this is one of my biggest fucking pet peeves right now. Why are people pronouncing the plural women as woman all of a sudden? I feel like I started noticing this one day, and then slowly half of the population was doing it. And for the Bean Supers, no, I'm not talking about when somebody has an accent or if their first language is not English, obviously. But it's been a thing that I've noticed for the past like 2 years or something, and it drives me fucking crazy.
It's pronounced women. The plural of woman is women.
The word is women. You're looking for the word women. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with not just you, but so many other people that think that woman is both singular and plural?
I was taught that this is pronounced women. But lately, I've noticed a lot of people saying woman instead of women. And they still pronounce singular woman as woman, but now they pronounce the plural women as woman as well, so there's not a clear distinction between singular or plural.
In this case especially, and cases similar, it feels like another soft, like red pill way for him to take women in the plural and switch it over to woman in the singular to talk about an entire group of people as a single monolith. Like, man strong, woman weak. The common version we've gotten used to with that is when you hear like guys refer to women as females, where the intention there is to strip women of their personhood and to instead associate them with their sex assigned at birth across the whole entire animal kingdom. It's a tactic to feed the us versus them mindset that you see in the red pill space that's pushed to indoctrinate young men and boys.
All right, look at this right here. This guy leaning in, does he look strong? He may be in really great shape, but does he look strong? No, weak. Women don't find weak men attractive.
Fellas, is it gay to like your wife? He's just really hung up on like, well, men. But aside from that, this idea that a man's worth and strength is bound to his ability to stake claim on the women in his life, and that a woman's role is to test that strength. And that for both the man and the woman to be happy, the man has to win the competition. I think it's great for couples to have their own dynamics that work for them, but I do feel strongly that a relationship rooted in competition and not partnership is the opposite of healthy. If you were to only stumble across this video and not the first one, at this point you would probably thinking, this sounds sexist.
You may be thinking, oh, this sounds sexist.
Yes.
And to that, I say no.
Oh.
This is just a reminder of the sexual dynamic that men and women have. I don't make up the rules, society and nature does.
You actually literally have been making up the rules to this weird theory that you also seem to have made up. So the sentence, I don't make the rules, society and nature does, is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. This started as what just seemed like body language analysis, and now it's just misogynistic and gross red pill propaganda. And this phrase he's using here is just an overt classic red pill argument. These arguments are referred to as bio-truths. When someone uses their flawed or incorrect understanding of biology to back up their awful claims and remove themselves from the accountability of those opinions. It works like this. Make a claim about sex or gender that's actually just your personal opinion or bias, then say it's actually not your opinion, it's biology, or evolution, or nature. Don't shoot the messenger, whatever. And now you've just made your sexism sound objective and unchangeable. After all, you can't argue with nature. And maybe if you're a fucking nincompoop idiot with a tiny pea brain rattling around in your skull who needs other people to tell you how to think, that might sound like it makes sense. But for those of us with critical thinking skills, it doesn't work that easily. Because what Jack is calling nature is actually just his opinion about what women want, or even what women should want. Jack, if you find these guys so hot, you should just shoot your shot and DM one of them. It might be the start of a beautiful relationship. But when Jack says that women don't find weak men attractive, he's saying that women are biologically programmed to be attracted to strong men, that it's evolution. And the subtext that he's pushing in saying that is that women should be attracted to men who display dominance, don't show vulnerability, and who maintain emotional distance by not showing affection, because men who lean towards their partners in photos are violating the natural hierarchy where men lead and women follow. It's in turn also pushing this idea that women need men to lead us and protect us, when in reality, a lot of the harm that's done against women in the world is at the hands of men. But that's another topic. These ideals remove agency from women by stating that women don't actually choose their partners based on individual preferences, compatibility, or genuine connection. Instead, it pushes that all women are biologically programmed to want the same thing, a dominant male who never shows vulnerability. This isn't just insulting, it's provably false. First of all, not all women are straight or even interested in a relationship or a partner. And second, even straight women are not a monolith. We have different preferences, values, and different ideas about what makes a good partner. But if you're trying to sell men and young boys on red pill ideology, you can't acknowledge that, because the point of red pill ideology is to absolve men from their own accountability. And to acknowledge that would mean these red pill men would have to do the actual work of being a good partner to specific individual women, and to be judged on their specific individual actions. When I went deeper into researching this, I was trying to figure out if this was like a conscious decision or possibly like a naive, ignorant one, because while both are equally bad, I wanted to know if he was just blindly parroting sexist red pill ideology or if he was covertly preaching it through a fun relationship theory. And turns out he didn't even invent the green line theory. He's taking it from a Twitter account called Rivellino.
The creator of the green line test was Rivellino on Twitter. Rivellino. If you want to go follow him, go ahead.
And no, I'm not gonna call that fuck-ass website X. If Elon wants to dead name his kid, I'm gonna dead name his website. Anyway, I don't even need to dissect this account, the tweets speak for themselves. Here's a few. Your biggest dating mistake is that you're looking for a mother instead of a sex slave. She can't decide what to eat for lunch, but she wants to decide the president of the United States? Weak husband, angry wife. Weak father, slutty daughter. Weak father, clueless son. Weak men, violent immigrants. All our problems start with weak men. It's pretty hard to deny that Jack doesn't know what he's doing by pushing this theory on TikTok when the creator he took it from is this blunt about his stance on women. My concerns about this being a covert red pill indoctrination wrapped in a fun little TikTok theory have already played out. After already going heavily viral for this, Jack later posted this.
Men everywhere are establishing in their relationships that they will no longer be failing the green line test. Just want to say a massive thank you to all of the men who bullied my boyfriend, because now he has green line trauma and won't take normal pictures with me. And all I gotta say about that is my man is passing with flying colors. And I'm not gonna sit around and act like I didn't have a lot to do with this, because I did.
I think this is really the last nail in the coffin of proof that he's absolutely trying to indoctrinate and push an agenda. And if adult men are falling for this, then it's absolutely had an impact on young boys. It's honestly fucking sad. But you know what? If you as a man are that worried about what other men think of you instead of being in the moment with your woman, that's fucking cringe. For a group of people who are typically extremely homophobic, you guys seem way more focused on other men than you do on women. So, let's rate this theory. Was there any good advice in this theory? No. But was it well intentioned? Also no. Did it end up causing harm in the world? Yes. So this one's gonna be a negative 100 out of 10 for me. It was a tough one to get through, so please don't listen to this fucking guy. Alright, next up is the bracelet theory.
Have you heard of the bracelet theory? When you're having a relationship with somebody, especially a romantic relationship, and you're making so much effort, that person tends to actually pull away. Why? So this is the explanation. Healthy relationship is a tense bracelet. So if somebody is making way too much of an effort, you see it drop. So the other person will naturally sense it, and since they want to continue being in a relationship with you, they will pull away. The problem is, if you don't get the memo, they will be out of the picture. So when you see that when you're making an effort, they're not matching your energy, pull away.
I had to remove the background music for copyright, obviously, but it's Heatwave by Glass Animals, and a lot of the comments were just people saying how much they loved that song and completely ignoring the video itself. And it just reminds me of the Verizon ringback tone era, where people would call you to just listen to your ringback tone and not actually to talk to you, and then they'd be like annoyed that you actually answered the phone because they just wanted to hear Buy You a Drink by T-Pain. Anyway, unlike the green line theory, which was just straight up like, stand up straight and don't show affection, this one was actually trying to make a point about relationship dynamics. so let's give it a fair shot. The general advice given is if you're putting in effort and they're not matching your energy, pull away. And when I was researching this, it turns out there is a real psychological concept here. It's called the pursuer-distancer dynamic. This comes from the Gottman Institute, which is one of the biggest institutions focusing on relationship psychology. The only catch though is that the pursuer-distancer dynamic is arguing kind of against the bracelet theory. In summary, the pursuer-distancer dynamic is a dance played by couples where one partner, the pursuer, seeks out the closeness and affection while the other partner, the distancer, distances themselves to make space. The problem here is that the bracelet theory would suggest that the pursuer then pull away to solve the problem, essentially placing solving the issue on themselves, where the pursuer-distancer dynamic suggests that both parties need to find a compromise to make it work. So where one partner pursues, seeking connection, asking for attention, initiating contact, and things like that, the other partner feels overwhelmed or crowded and they distance themselves. This distancing makes the pursuer feel more anxious, so they pursue harder, which makes the distancer distance more, and you get stuck in this cycle. So the bracelet theory is sort of gesturing at a real thing. Sometimes taking on too much responsibility in a relationship can trigger some under-functioning in your partner, and if you're constantly the one initiating plans, checking in, solving problems, and carrying emotional labor, your partner just might let you. They might become passive because you've taken on all the active roles. So I guess credit where credit is due. This theory does correctly identify that relationships need some kind of balance, and that sometimes pulling back can help recalibrate that balance. However, the problem with the bracelet theory isn't that it's completely wrong. The problem is that it's oversimplified, and the advice it gives could actually make your relationship worse, because the bracelet theory treats all pulling away as the same thing, when there are a million different reasons why someone might not match your energy. For example, it could be that you've taken on all the responsibility in the relationship and they've become complacent. Then sure, pulling back might help recalibrate. But maybe they're going through something difficult, like stress, depression, or family issues, and they haven't confided in you yet. So then you pulling back will make them feel abandoned. Or maybe they're avoidant and will always distance when you pursue, regardless of how much effort you put in. So then pulling back becomes a game between the two of you that just never ends. Or maybe you're codependent and relying too heavily on your partner, and they're pulling away. So if you pull away as well without addressing the problem at hand, then now you'll never be satisfied, since you never solved the root of your problem. The bracelet theory gives you one solution: pull away, for many different problems. And in several of these scenarios, pulling away is the wrong move. The more I talk about this theory, the more I'm confused why the creator chose a bracelet as well, since that's an object that's worn by one single person. Wouldn't it make more sense if it was two people playing tug of war, and the relationship is like the rope, and if one person leans in too much, the rope drops? I don't know, maybe all she had was a bracelet. I think my overall message here is that communication should be the first move before you jump to testing your partner by pulling away and seeing how they respond. Your relationship is a partnership, and should mean that the two of you work together to find common ground, and a dynamic that works for both of you and acclimates to both of your attachment styles. Okay, time to rate this one. Was there any good advice in this theory? Maybe, but I think it requires nuance, and ultimately it kind of felt toxic. Was it well-intentioned? I think so. I think this creator was trying to offer some legitimate help, albeit oversimplified. Did it end up causing harm in the world? Hard to say. I think if you're falling for this one, your relationship was probably a little unstable to begin with. I'd say overall this one's a 3 out of 10. Alright, next up is the orange peel theory.
Is an orange peel about to ruin your relationship? According to TikTok, this trend will allow you to test the strength of your relationship, but how trustworthy is it? This trend first started doing the rounds in 2023, and now the orange peel theory has become synonymous with signs of true love. But how does it work? So put simply, people are asking their partners to peel oranges for them, and their partner's response is supposed to be an indication of how healthy the relationship is. If they're willing to peel an orange for you, then this small act of service and your partner's willingness to do so is supposed to indicate a healthy relationship. But if they refuse, then it's a major red flag. Not only is this supposed to represent the importance of acts of service in relationships, but this can also test the relationship between your family and friends as well. Have you tried and tested this theory?
So first of all, why was that orange in the microwave in that one shot? But as for the theory itself, it's basically a test to see if your partner is willing to do a small act of service for you for no reason. I do agree that acts of service in a relationship are super important, and when your partner asks for something small and simple, like peeling an orange, doing those small acts of service without question makes for a loving and caring dynamic.
Oh, I'm not gonna peel an apple for you.
But Mac always does it for me.
Whereas if you refuse to do small tasks like that, it could speak to a larger selfishness issue, or just a lack of caring about your partner that can lead to them feeling undervalued. So on its face, the orange peel theory seems like a simple way to see if somebody's a kind partner or not, sure. But when you mix in the fact that a lot of these people are walking up to their partners with their phone in their hand, like very obviously filming them, it kind of complicates the way that that person would naturally react if they asked them to do something for them. Also, the idea of testing your partner for internet validation in general is a little shitty. I can understand why people would want to seek out information that tells them whether maybe a new relationship is giving green flags or red flags, but it shouldn't be through little tests like this, in my opinion. You should probably know how the person you're seeing or in a relationship with would react to you asking for a small favor without testing them. And maybe I'm not the one to talk because I've been with my husband for almost like 10 years now, but if I asked him to peel an orange for me, he wouldn't think twice. I don't have to test whether or not that's the case because I know he's a good person. And while, yes, we've been together a long time, I also would have known that within the first month of dating him because of the way he is in general. You shouldn't have to test somebody with an orange to see whether or not they'll do little things for you. Have they historically done little things for you? There's your answer. Now for the rating. Was there any good advice in this theory? Sure. I think the overall advice of being with somebody who does little things for you, even when they're silly and unnecessary, is good. Small acts of service are important in a relationship, and something that seems dumb, like peeling an orange or refusing to peel an orange for your partner, could speak to a greater dynamic in your relationship. Was it well-intentioned? I believe so. I think it came from a place of encouraging people to make sure that their partners care for them. Did it end up causing harm in the world? Maybe a few small fights. Maybe a small uptick in oranges sold for a month. But real harm is doubtful. I'd give the orange peel theory a solid 7 out of 10. And lastly, but not leastly, we have the bird theory.
If you're new to bird theory, all it means is that there are researchers who found that in happy relationships where one partner said, oh, hey, look, there's a bird, or they share something of interest to them, their partner turned towards them 86% of the time to lean in with curiosity to ask them questions and to affirm their interest, whether they shared it or not. But in relationships that were headed towards divorce instead, when one partner shared something of interest, the other partner only turned towards them 33% of the time. And this can really make or break your intimacy.
So this one is basically the idea of bids for connection, and again, it's from the Gottman Institute. Dr. John Gottman was the first to coin this idea, and it basically just describes the everyday things that we say or do around our partner that can build intimacy over time when they're reciprocated, but when they're ignored or turned away from, they can ruin or erode the relationship. So the bird theory is describing a bid for connection where one partner shares about a bird that they saw that day because it was cool to them, or asks for their partner's immediate attention to look at a bird, and ideally the partner would immediately engage with interests, affirming and turning toward that bid for connection. Like, oh, you saw a bird today? Tell me about it. Or, oh my God, there's a bird where? Showing interest, even if they don't necessarily care about birds. And it doesn't have to be a bird. A bid for connection can be a multitude of things. It can even be like a sigh. If you go, does your partner ignore that? Or do they go, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Again, I don't love the way people on TikTok turned this into a testing your partner thing, but in general, the idea of bids for connection, with the bird thing as an example, comes from legitimate psychology, from what I could tell. All right, time for the rating on this one. Was there any good advice in this theory? Absolutely. I think there's great advice to learn from this theory. Was it well-intentioned? Yes, this one comes from actual psychology. Did it end up causing harm in the world? I wouldn't think so. If it caused any harm, it might have caused fights that were gonna happen regardless. Overall, I'll give it a 10 out of 10. If people promise to stop testing their partners for social media. So what have we learned? Don't blindly listen to people on the internet without doing your own research, unless it's me. I'm always right. Don't test your partners, and just don't take advice from people who work at Barstool Sports. There are plenty of free and legitimate relationship psychology resources online if you genuinely want to learn about things like this and what to look for or look out for in a relationship. Bottom line is, don't go to TikTok for advice. And while I've said quite a few times not to test your partners and put it on social media, in the interest of journalism, Leighton and I are now going to take the ultimate relationship test. And there's a lot on the line too, because whoever does worse at this test is going to have to take Navy out to potty the next time she needs to go in the middle of the night. So these are expert crafted questions. And by expert crafted, I mean I got them off of cosmopolitan.com under questions for couples. We're actually gonna have to separate a little bit so that we can't read each other's answers. It's gonna be a question, of course. And then we're gonna write our own answer and then the answer for, each other.
This is half a Nave right here. Half a Navy Belly. Navy Belly cameo.
Nave, you selling those cameos?
Navy belly
It
cameo.
really is just a little. It's like Fish Boy from House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah.
Okay, first question. Nave, feel free to answer too, but don't say it out loud until we flip. What is your partner's favorite color? I'm gonna say one, two, three.
1, 2, 3. Release them.
What did you say?
I wrote you for black. Mine was blue. What'd you write?
Blue. Same. I like your cartoons.
I won't focus.
Oh.
Do you think if we turn the AC on, it'll mess with the audio?
I don't know. If you turn the AC on, it's gonna mess with me being showy. Oh, Navy's Dussy's in the shot.
Not the Dussy. Dude,
Nave.
it's hot in here.
What is it?
76. That's gonna get cold.
Flip it around. 6, 7.
Okay. What
Navy.
was the question?
Navy, do you
Oh,
want to
get
move?
rid of the Dussy.
Do you want to move your Dussies in the shot?
Let's censor the Dussy.
What is their favorite movie?
Oh, that's a hard one.
I know it's a hard one for you, but I'm gonna pick my best guess in good faith.
How do I know what my favorite movie is?
Usually you just know in your brain.
I don't have like a favorite like that. It depends.
Usually you just know in your brain. Guess in good faith.
How do I know what my favorite movie is?
Usually you just know in your brain.
I don't have like a favorite. How do I know? Oh, that's a hard one.
I know it's a hard one for you, but I'm gonna. What is their favorite movie?
Oh, that's a hard one.
I know it's a hard one for you, but I'm gonna pick my best guess in good faith.
How do I know what my favorite movie is?
Usually you just know in your brain.
I don't have like a favorite like that. It depends on my mood. It depends on the weather.
It's bothering me this isn't centered. I'm gonna rewrite my answer.
Do you have an obvious one for me?
I have one that I feel good about.
I'm worried I'm gonna get my own wrong, and you're gonna get mine right.
Well, then you can choose whether or not to give me a point, and it's based on your discretion, I think.
You gotta say what's your favorite movie of this genre.
No. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Release them. What did you say?
I wrote The House That Jack Built for Brooke, and then I wrote Punch Drunk Love for me just because I didn't know what to say. Oh, cool. There you go.
And that's Navy.
I'm not convinced it's my favorite movie, but
I
it's
think
definitely like...
gun to your head, that's what you would say.
If I had to bring 5 on an island with me, I'm bringing it for sure.
And The House That Jack Built is a perfect movie. I don't stand behind every word the director's ever said, but it doesn't change the fact that that's a perfect movie. I'm sorry. Separate the art from the artist.
Dude, there's so much of your hair in this house that it's
sorry for
all over everything.
Balding. Okay, well, one of us is gonna have to lose at some point. So, what is their favorite food?
Ooh.
Oh, okay. Me when I can't.
Like cuisine or dish?
Oh, cuisine would be like.
Yeah, like type of food or...
Which would you like to do?
Let's do cuisine.
Okay.
Okay. Brooklyn's favorite cuisine.
Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, release them.
What'd you put?
Me French, you Mexican.
Me Mexican, you French.
What? Oui, oui. Your microphone did, mine did not. But then my throat did, so. What's something completely random that your partner's weirdly good at?
Ooh. You have a lot.
No, I don't think I do. I think I have like 2.
Random to people who don't know you or random to you? Like
I guess
you just
it would be
randomly
like-
have this skill.
I think it's like that. Like, what's it called? Like a hidden talent, I think is the question. Oh, I have a really random one, actually.
Should I put 3 down? down? Because this is such a broad question. Okay. And then all we have to do is get one to a line for each. Okay, that sounds fair.
Such a random one for you.
I don't think I have a third skill. Should I just take
It's okay if it's 2, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. What does yours say?
For my skill?
It's really focusing on
Rick Sanchez. Wait, let me write that because I need to put a third one anyways.
Fuck off, don't just give it to me. Oh, you wrote 3 for me as well? I thought you were writing 3 for just yourself. Okay, so for me, I wrote Connect 4, air hockey, and pinball.
I wrote pinball, Connect 4, and then making things out of resin.
I am weirdly good at that.
Yeah, you've made a lot of stuff out of resin.
And you are weirdly good at the Rick Sanchez impression in a way where you just decided one day to try it, and it was like, whoa, what the fuck?
And then, it was the guy from Family Guy.
Oh, it was because of, oh my God, what was the line that he did? And we were both
when
like,
he says,
what the
thank
fuck?
you, Peter. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's Joe.
I thought you were going to put this 100%.
I almost did. I really almost did, and then I thought there's no way that you're going to randomly say that. What else did you write? Water drop cheek sound.
Tech decking. And Rick Sanchez impression.
I almost wrote the water drop cheek sound. Whoa. And I was like, there's no way he's going to... It just felt unfair to you because I thought there was no way you were going to fucking read my mind.
Oh,
but
no.
Apparently you did.
Went in my sleeve.
What is his or her favorite alcoholic drink?
Oh, this is easy. I'm going to do it by its initial because I don't know how to spell it.
You switch it up a lot, but I wrote one down, but I'm going to have a caveat here. Okay, well, I just saw your answer and I was right, so never mind. I had already written it. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I was like, but you do love a Cab Sauv, so I was going to say, like, wait, is it a Cab Sauv? But...
My brain was thinking it had to be a cocktail.
Yeah, I kind of did too. And then I realized afterwards, it never focused on yours. Yeah, Amaretto Sour. I don't know if I spelled Amaretto right either, but Moscow Mule for Leighton. The fridge shit, no.
You're not wearing pants.
I know.
She doesn't have pants on, you guys.
No, I have a skirt on.
Oh, you do?
Mm-hmm. Clock it.
Don't whip out the skirtissy.
The scussy.
Here are 400 plus how well do you know me questions. We're just going to do the first...
Let's do them all.
We're just going to do the first 5.
All right.
Okay? Also, look at this.
Is that AI?
I don't know.
The drawing. Is that an AI dog? She loved that. Is that an AI dog? Your dog. Is that an AI dog? She really likes that. Is that an AI dog? Is that an AI dog?
I'm also trying to not dox us.
What's her home address? What's her social security number?
Okay, this is actually like a pretty hard one.
Okay, that's what she said.
Question 1. Favorite book?
Okay.
I wrote 3 for you.
I'm writing 3 for you too.
Did you eat a little Toblerone?
Mm-hmm.
Dang. Can you bring me some?
I didn't know you wanted any. But I'll bring you some in a second.
No, I can go get it. I just didn't know if you were packing some Toblerone.
I put it in my cheeks like a chipmunk.
Yeah. Just heat it up for me. So I don't have to chew it.
Open. Okay, I described the last one because I couldn't fucking remember the name of it.
1, 2, 3. Release them.
Okay, what'd you write for me?
I wrote... It's not focusing. I wrote either Hellbound Heart, The Exorcist, or A Clockwork Orange.
Okay, all 3 very fucking perfect books.
What'd you write?
The Exorcist.
Oh, okay.
But they're all really.
And then I wrote A Short Stay in Hell for mine.
Okay, so I wrote A Short Stay in Hell, and then I got nervous and wrote Dungeon Crawler Carl, and then I couldn't.
Not my favorite.
And then I couldn't remember the name of the last one, but I wrote the one about different dimensions that has an Apple TV show.
Oh, I love those books.
What are they called?
The.
You can't even fucking remember.
Well, that's because it's not my favorite book.
Well, valid, but like, I feel vindicated. I'm not.
So it's Blake Crouch, but
Blake Crouch
of the Blake Crouch books, Wayward Pines series would hands down be my favorite.
That's what I was trying to think of.
I can't remember the name of the one that he got the Apple TV show.
That's not Wayward Pines, though.
No, no.
Okay.
But that was.
I was thinking of Wayward
I really
Pines.
liked reading that book, and Dungeon Crawler Carl's very fun. But A Short Stay in Hell, like,
I knew it was a short span. Huh?
That like actually kind of like changed my brain chemistry a little bit.
Unfortunately, both of us got this, so that's continuing the tie. What's the next one, Bobo?
Oh, yeah, I'm in charge.
You're in charge.
Oops. What's their favorite band or musical artist? So it could be like an individual.
I feel like you're...
Band or musical artist. So it could be like an individual.
I feel like you're getting off easy with this one. Yours depends on like the day.
I'm wearing a Primus shirt right now.
I know.
What shirt are you wearing? Oh, sorry. What shirt are you wearing?
I'm wearing a Saw X Princess Bride mashup.
Oh.
It's Adam and Dr. Lawrence in Saw, and it says, "I told you that I'd always come for you. Death cannot stop true love."
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Release them. Gorillas? Is that what you wrote? Yeah. And Dead Kennedys? It's still tied.
That's really funny.
I don't really listen to them that much anymore, and I don't necessarily listen to the new stuff that much, but they were huge in my life growing up. I think we tied.
Yeah, I think we tied, unfortunately. So we'll both have to take Navy out in the middle of the night.
Alright guys, I'm gonna call it right there. For more videos, check out my second channel, Brooke Sharks Bites, where I post beauty and lifestyle content. A lot of you guys comment asking if I have a hair or makeup tutorial, and I do on my second channel. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and you can join my Patreon.
And you have to tell him whether or not there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And 5 million people are going to die as a consequence of this action. How do you know what to do? Well, lucky for you, Masterclass has a course that's done by the
interesting and rich. The boy in the Striped Pajamas is a Holocaust fiction novel written in 2006 by author John Boyne. It's about a 9-year-old kid, Bruno, who moves to Auschwitz with his Nazi commandant father. While living by the concentration camp, Bruno befriends a young Jewish boy, Shmuel, who is held captive on the other side of the fence. In the last few pages of the book, Bruno breaks into Auschwitz. Once there, he's immediately mistaken for a Jew, and he and his friend are both promptly murdered in the gas chambers. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas was massively successful. It sold over 11 million copies, been translated into 58 languages. It was adapted into an extremely successful movie and a ballet. And both the book and the movie, I don't know about the ballet, have seen much play in classrooms. According to one study from the Center for Holocaust Education, in 2016, 35% of UK classrooms were using some form of the text. So looking at all that, you're probably thinking, wow, this book sounds awesome. Heartfelt message, tragic ending, everyone must love it. But not so fast, guys, chill out a little bit, because the book, in the last 5 years, has faced a lot of controversy. In 2020, the Auschwitz Foundation responded to a tweet from Boyne saying, "The Boy in the Striped Pajamas should be avoided by anybody who studies or teaches about the history of the Holocaust." And they linked an article on that subject from the Holocaust Center. And they doubled down on that opinion 2 years later, tweeting another article from The Guardian. Pretty intense words there. The argument from the Auschwitz Foundation, the main source of the book's controversy, comes down to a few pretty basic points. First, the novel is filled with historical inaccuracies. It pervades the fiction that most Nazis were unaware of the Holocaust and presents an extremely implausible scenario, a random Jewish boy just hanging out in Auschwitz, ready and able to make friends with people outside the camps. Second, the book calls on us to empathize with Nazis over the Jews that they persecuted. In the final pages of the novel, we're meant to feel particularly bad that Bruno, our protagonist, dies in the gas chambers. But of course, no Nazi children did die in the gas chambers, just a whole lot of Jewish ones, and so you could say that the tragedy of the novel is tone deaf, doesn't give enough compassion to the actual victims of Hitler's final solution. Third, because of those first 2 points, the book does some, active harm, particularly to the young people who read it in school. In that Center for Holocaust Education report, they conducted a focus group with kids who read the book or saw the movie, and they seem to be taking some pretty bad lessons from it. Well, we always think of the Nazis as the bad guys, and this shows that the Holocaust didn't just affect the Jews, said a 9-year-old. I feel sorry for practically everyone who was under Hitler's control, and it doesn't matter who was the bigger victim. They were all still victims of Hitler's control in some shape or form, says an 11-year-old. Could we please just stop with the oppression Olympics about the Holocaust? It's because of criticisms like this that I find the title for this video fair. Are there kids' books that are less appreciated, that people find more annoying? I mean, yeah, probably, but I'm at a loss trying to come up with a book as influential as The Boy in the Striped Pajamas that is so hated. Not hated for aesthetic reasons, not because it's a bad book, but because it's seen as harmful, immoral, a detriment to the people people who read it and an insult to the subject it's about. John Boyne victim. They were all still victims of Hitler's control in some shape or form, says an 11-year-old. Could we please just stop with the oppression Olympics about the Holocaust? It's because of criticisms like this that I find the title for this video fair. Are there kids' books that are less appreciated, that people find more annoying? I mean, yeah, probably, but I'm at a loss trying to come up with a book as influential as The Boy in the Striped Pajamas that is so hated. Not hated for aesthetic reasons, not because it's a bad book, but because it's seen as harmful, immoral, a detriment to the people who read it, and an insult to the subject it's about. John Boyne does not appreciate the criticism. For one thing, he thinks it's all like politically motivated, woke bullshit. In the years after writing The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, Boyne has taken on quite a transphobic tone. He wrote a silly article about how he doesn't like to be called cis, he tweeted in support of J.K. Rowling, called himself a fellow TERF, and seemingly got a nice din-din with her. He, a gay man, has spoken about not wanting to associate gay rights with trans rights.
As a gay man, my views on LGBT rights and my views on the whole LGBT idea, the concept of intertwining these two things which have no connection to each other whatsoever.
To cut a long story short, stuff like this led to much hatred and anger, and from Boyne's perspective, the backlash to The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is entirely motivated by that anger.
My theory isn't that a lot of it had to do with it. My theory is that all of it had to do with it. 100%. Absolutely.
But to drag such a beloved book into such a toxic argument, and that's just...
Look, I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Still, that's not all Boyne says. When he's asked specifically about what the Holocaust Foundation said, he usually takes a different tack.
Firstly, I think it's important to clarify what the Auschwitz Memorial said. Okay. What they said was that it shouldn't be used as a teaching tool for those studying or learning about the Holocaust. Now, I'm a novelist. I didn't write a school book or a textbook or a university novel. I wrote just a novel, a fable.
See, guys, nobody hates the novel. Auschwitz didn't mean anything nasty when they said that the book should be avoided by anybody who studies the Holocaust. They're just saying, don't teach it in school. And that's fair enough, because The Boy in the Striped Pajamas isn't a textbook. It's a fable. It's like Animal Farm.
And they've never actually commented on the novel itself, just the teaching of it. And I think it's a reasonable point. I think if you are going to study the Holocaust, I don't necessarily think Boy in the Striped Pajamas is your starting point, any more than Animal Farm would be your starting point for the Russian Revolution, but it might be a good ancillary book.
So does this argument make sense? No, not really. For one thing, I think fables can obviously say false things, right? Like, sure, Animal Farm is a fable, but it does make claims, right? It conveys information and ideas about Stalin and Lenin and Trotsky and the fate of the Russian Revolution.
Soon or late the day will be when man's defeated and we are free.
And if Stalin was nothing like Napoleon the Pig, if he was a big-hearted sweetie whose only goal was to help the proletariat, then Orwell's book would be wrong. He would be telling lies.
Do any of you want to see Jones back?
No.
Good.
I just don't think calling something a fable is much of a defense against the charge of misinformation, especially when the fable is about something as important as the Holocaust. And that leads us to the more important point here, which is that, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas isn't a fable. Animal Farm is filled with pigs and horses and stuff. There's a sheep in the book. That's why it's a fable. Like, there's an allegorical element to it. But what is the allegory in The Boy in the Striped Pajamas? It takes place at a concentration camp. Its protagonist is the son of a Nazi commandant. Adolf Hitler makes an appearance in the book, as well as his partner Eva Braun. So if the novel is just a fable, then that's crazy, right? That's a crazy type fable. Still, I can't help but find John Boyne's defense here a bit interesting. He's almost saying to his readers, guys, just please read the book. I don't have any big thoughts about the Holocaust or World War II or the Nazis or whatever. It's just a fun book with a nice message about some sad boys. And look at them dance. Are you really gonna get mad at them? And to this I say, okay, let's talk about The Boy in the Striped Pajamas on its own terms. Do you see the distance between you and I right now? That's actually the appropriate amount of space. I'm supposed to be this far from you. So the first critique anybody would want to make of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is that its protagonist, Bruno, is almost incomprehensibly stupid. The most obvious example of this is Bruno's refusal to say proper nouns. Like, he says the Fury instead of the Führer and out with instead of Auschwitz. It seems like Boyne thought this added to the novel's fable-like quality, made it seem more vague and abstract. But this effect doesn't really work because we all know what Bruno is talking talking about, and the characters are always correcting him. Who's the Fury? Asked Bruno. You're pronouncing it wrong, said Father, pronouncing it correctly for him. It's not called Outwith, Bruno's sister said. Why can't you pronounce it right? It is called Outwith, he protested. It's not, she insisted. So this doesn't feel so much like a fable as it does a boy who is painfully unaware of the world around him. He pronounces every other word fine, by the way. It's just words that have something to do with Nazi Germany that really mess him up for some reason. But even if we want to allow Boyne his fable explanation for Outwith, Bruno is just holistically very ignorant in ways that don't feel natural for a 9-year-old. Like at one point, all the boys are talking about what their fathers do for a living. You know, my father's a teacher, my father's a chef, my father's a grocer. But Boyne writes, when they asked Bruno what his father did, he opened his mouth to tell them, then realized that he didn't know himself. All he could say was that his father was a man to watch and that the Fury had big things in mind for him. Now, what does that mean? The Boy in the Striped Pajamas takes place roughly in 1943. Bruno likely wouldn't remember a time that Germany wasn't at war, and Nazi Germany was, of course, a very martial culture, quite oriented around engagement with military life. Now, I'm not saying that Bruno would necessarily be able to recite all of his father's duties, but why doesn't the word soldier come to mind? Why is that being treated like some nondescript and esoteric occupation? Wouldn't Bruno know about this? Wouldn't he have been taught to be proud of his father's position in the military? Or here's another example, the end of an interaction between Bruno and his father. Boyne writes, Bruno pushed his 2 feet together and shot his right arm into the air before clicking his 2 heels together and saying in as deep and clear a voice as possible, as much like his father's as he could manage, the words he said every time he left a soldier's presence. Heil Hitler, he said, which he presumed was another way of saying, well, goodbye for now, have a pleasant afternoon. Isn't that just baffling? Why is Bruno presuming things? Why is he mentally translating the phrase Heil Hitler, something he no doubt hears constantly, into something else? Are we to believe that this boy has no idea who Hitler is or why he's celebrated? It almost feels here like Bruno is an alien presence in the world of Nazi Germany, one who understands the basics of human interaction, but didn't grow up there and so never has a clue what's going on. So these choices are all very strange and silly, but I think what's going on here does kind of make sense from an aesthetic perspective. Because essentially, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is selling itself not as historical fiction, but as dystopian literature. Think of Jonas from The Giver, a boy who starts off his novel thinking that his flat authoritarian world is normal. Think of Tally from Uglies, one of my favorite books/movies. She starts off her story excited to receive government-mandated sexy surgery.
You'll be beautiful and free.
These characters are oblivious. They don't see what could possibly be wrong with the world around them, and that lends these stories a feeling of suspense and excitement.
I guess I'm sort of terrified.
Precision of language.
And this is very much the feeling of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, right? At base, it's a book about exotifying the Third Reich, treating it not as a place where real people lived, but as this kind of odd dystopia where everything just feels off. What is the Fury? Where is Outwith? Outwith what? What does my father do? Who are these people off in the distance, and why are they wearing pajamas? Is the fence around them there to keep them in, or keep us out? It's so lurid and dramatic, and it feels like it's all headed toward this inevitable payoff, where the hero finally gets to understand what's going on, what this evil society is really all about. But here's the problem. That catharsis, that lifting of the veil, it's the one thing that this book can't give us. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a book that is written for its ending. A child totally ignorant to the Holocaust, who is naive, who just wants to make friends and go on adventures, is horribly punished, gassed by the Nazis. In the moment he dies, the reader can reflect on the arbitrary nature of evil, on the purpose of fences, on the reason we place boundaries between the self and the other. There was no real difference between Shmuel and Bruno, two boys with the same birthday who love to play and love each other. But the world thought otherwise, and so they had to die. There is no place in this evil Nazi world for the innocence of a child. So I can see why this ending would be appealing to people. It has a kind of fun Twilight Zone character to it. It's brutal and intense, and in some sense poetically just. There's just one issue with it though. It completely breaks the story. See, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas wants to be about two things. First, a book about friendship. The novel reminds us quite frequently that Bruno and Shmuel talk all the time over the course of a full year, that they are best friends. The last words Bruno says before he dies are, "You're my best friend, Shmuel, my best friend for life." Second, it's a book about a boy who must remain so ignorant of the Holocaust that by the end, he willingly and without fear or trepidation jumps the fence into Auschwitz. And maybe when I put it like this, you can see the issue. These two stories can't really coexist. And that's because the more friendly Bruno gets with his Holocaust victim best friend, the less sense it makes that he doesn't know one single thing about the death camp he lives next to. In other words, if these two really are such good friends, why doesn't Bruno learn about Shmuel over the course of the novel? So this is a deep tension at the core of this book, right? The most central parts of its plot feel directly at odds with each other. So how does Boyne write around it? Well, by making the relationship between Bruno and Shmuel as shallow and meaningless as possible. Boyne constantly finds ways for Shmuel to not communicate his feelings and experiences, oftentimes in ways that are downright agonizing to read. Like, look at this one scene where Bruno sees that Shmuel has a black eye. Boyne writes, "One afternoon, Shmuel had a black eye, and when Bruno asked him about it, he just shook his head and said that he didn't want to talk about it. Bruno assumed that there were bullies all over the world, not just in schools in Berlin, and that one of them had done this to Shmuel." It's very convenient, isn't it, that Shmuel doesn't want to talk about the horrible things going on in his life, that Bruno doesn't have to hear about the Nazi guards who regularly brutalize the inhabitants of this camp. Because if Shmuel did want to talk about it, well, Bruno would probably be less inclined to think of Outwith as a good place that would be nice to visit. And you can see in this passage how the need to keep Bruno ignorant actively cuts against the feeling that Shmuel is a person, one we're supposed to care about and empathize with. Imagine you were in Shmuel's shoes. You're a child and you live in hell and you're hungry all the time and grown-ups sometimes assault you. Suddenly though, a boy your own age comes into your life and now he's your friend and he sometimes brings you food. Now just think about all of the emotions you'd feel. Can this person save me, save my family? If they bring food, can they bring more? Perhaps if you told this boy why you have a black eye, he'd do something, anything about it. There's a million interesting ways this interaction could have gone. It's a scene with a lot of potential. But in the novel, all of that has to be artificially tamped down. Bruno can't know what Shmuel is going through, and so Shmuel is not allowed to talk. Their friendship feels like nothing because the book structurally cannot give us more than that. What happened to your face? I don't want to talk about it. That's all we get. And this need to protect Bruno from information, even if it doesn't make practical or narrative sense, goes to way more absurd places. Like, let me read you a conversation between Shmuel and Bruno from a bit later on. The two boys looked down at the same time, and the difference was easy to see. Although Bruno was small for his age and certainly not fat, his hand appeared healthy and full of life. The veins weren't visible through the skin, the fingers weren't little more than dying twigs. Shmuel's hand, however, told a very different story. "How did it get like that?" he asked. "I don't know," said Shmuel. "It used to look more like yours, but I didn't notice it changing. Everyone on my side of the fence looks like this now." In this scene, we are expected to believe that Shmuel and Bruno, two 9-year-olds, are wholly unaware of the connection between not eating food and getting skinnier. Perhaps we could forgive this lapse of knowledge from Bruno, a child totally sheltered from the world and who seems all around quite dim, but why is it that Shmuel must be equally ignorant, must be forced to not know information that would be so obvious to him, as obvious as the connection between being strangled and gasping for air? He doesn't know why he's skinny? yes, he does, or at least he would in any work of art that actually cared about him, about the things he experiences on a day-to-day basis. But because Bruno cannot be made to hear about the starvation of his friend must not be capable of understanding starvation. But here's the thing, even in the rare moments where Shmuel is able to talk more freely about his experiences in the camp, the text still finds strange ways for Bruno to not process what his friend says. Let me read one more scene here, another talk between the two boys. "I don't know why you're so anxious to come across here anyway," said Shmuel. "It's not very nice." "You haven't tried living in my house," said Bruno. "For one thing, it doesn't have 5 floors, only 3. How can anyone live in so small a place as that?" He'd forgotten Shmuel's story about the 11 people all living in the same room together before they had to come to Outwith. He forgot. He literally forgot. He just, he forgot about it. And that makes sense, I guess, because if he'd remembered such a thing, he probably wouldn't want to go to Auschwitz himself. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a book that clearly wants to be about the transformative power of love. Bruno and Shmuel, 2 boys living opposite lives, come to love one another, and through that love come to understand and question the dystopian world around them. But that's a lie. There is no friendship here, no connection. Shmuel cannot meaningfully talk to Bruno, cannot meaningfully affect him, because if he did, the book couldn't have its contrived and insipid ending. And so we're left with this kind of hollow story. A boy who spends a full year, talking to a victim of the Holocaust who does not learn one single thing about it. But okay, from a certain perspective, isn't that kind of interesting? Okay, so John Boyne thinks this is a book about friendship, about, quote, 2 basically good-hearted and kind boys. We know this. He's been saying versions of it for almost 20 years now.
I always say it's a novel about friendship, more than I use the word Holocaust. It's the friendship between Bruno and Shmuel.
And if we take this interpretation to the novel, it is a colossal failure. But what if, I don't know, John Boyne is wrong? What if he completely misunderstands his own story and the characters he portrays? And what if, instead of worrying about what the book is trying to say, we worried about the things it actually says? Let me be direct here. I think The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is an interesting and rich book. At times, I even think it's quite good. But to understand it, I think we have to move away from the fiction that it's some kind of cutesy fable. So okay, let's jump in with one of the most interesting sequences of the entire book. Over the course of the novel, Bruno develops a relationship with a guy named Pavel, a Jewish man who works for the commandant's family, preparing vegetables and helping out around the house. In one scene, Pavel accidentally spills wine on the Nazi Lieutenant Kotler, and Kotler beats him to death. And this all happens right in front of Bruno. Jumping forward around 10 pages, and coincidentally, Shmuel makes an appearance at Bruno's house. He's there to polish crystal. Bruno offers Shmuel some chicken and greets him as a friend, but when Lieutenant Kotler finds them, this happens. It's kind of a long passage. "Have you been eating?" Kotler asked in a quiet voice, as if he could scarcely believe it himself. Shmuel shook his head. "You have been eating," insisted Kotler. "Did you steal something from that fridge?" Shmuel opened his mouth and closed it. He opened it again and tried to find words, but there were none. "Answer me," shouted Lieutenant Kotler. "Did you steal something from that fridge?" "No, sir, he gave it to me," said Shmuel, tears welling up in his eyes as he threw a sideways glance at Bruno. "He's my friend," he added. "What do you mean he's your friend?" Kotler asked. "Do you know this boy, Bruno? Have you seen him before? Have you talked to him? Why does he say he's your friend?" Bruno wished he could run away. He hated Lieutenant Kotler, but he was advancing on him now, and all Bruno could think of was the afternoon when he had seen him shooting a dog, and the evening when Pavel had made him so angry that he... "Tell me, Bruno," shouted Kotler, his face growing red. "I won't ask you a third time." "I've never spoken to him," said Bruno immediately. "I've never seen him before in my life. I don't know him." Lieutenant Kotler nodded and seemed satisfied with the answer. Very slowly, he turned his head back at Shmuel. "You will finish polishing all these glasses," said Lieutenant Kotler in a very quiet voice now, so quiet that Bruno almost couldn't hear him. "And then I will come to collect you and bring you back to the camp, where we will have a discussion about what happens to boys who steal. This is understood, yes?" This scene occurs around 3/4 of the way through the book, and it feels like a kind of breaking point for Bruno. The satisfying moment where his blindness to the Holocaust finally gives way to clarity. Bruno knows that he's not supposed to be friends with Shmuel, right? Otherwise he wouldn't have lied, gotten his friend into trouble. There's an implicit sense then that Bruno is at least somewhat aware of the power dynamics at hand, that he's not so ignorant. What's more, Bruno explicitly compares the way Kotler's acting with Bruno to the way he acted when he beat Pavel to death. The evening when Pavel made him so angry that So it certainly feels like Bruno is thinking what the reader is thinking. In the weeks that follow this scene, Shmuel is no longer at his usual spot behind the fence. Boyne writes, "Every afternoon that followed, Bruno returned to the place in the fence where they met, but Shmuel was never there. After almost a week, he was convinced that what he had done was so terrible that he would never be forgiven." And it makes sense that Bruno has that thought because he knows demonstrably that Nazis kill Jews sometimes. But then what does Bruno do with this knowledge? Nothing. Less than nothing. Here's what happens when the boys reunite. "Shmuel," Bruno said, running toward him and sitting down, almost crying with relief and regret. "I'm so sorry, Shmuel. I don't know why I did it. Say you'll forgive me." "It's all right," said Shmuel, looking up at him now. There was a lot of bruising on his face, and Bruno grimaced, and for a moment he forgot about his apology. "What happened to you?" he asked, and then didn't wait for an answer. "Was it your bicycle? Because that happened to me back in Berlin a couple of years ago. I fell off when I was going too fast and was black and blue for weeks. Does it hurt?" When John Boyne was asked why it is that Bruno doesn't know about the Holocaust, he responded, "The idea that Bruno, an innocent 9-year-old, would understand the events taking place around him implies the hindsight knowledge gained only by the passing of time and the study of history." But the thing is, this series of events doesn't read like innocence or confusion or even the stupidity of a 9-year-old, does it? No, it reads like denial. Bruno's outright refusal to deal with knowledge we know he possesses. Refusal to care about his friend. "How did you get hurt, Shmuley? You fall off your bike?" And the thing is, when you start to look for it, this sense of denial and apathy kind of pervades the text. Like, let me read you another passage, a conversation between Bruno and Shmuel. "There aren't any good soldiers," said Shmuel. "Of course there are," said Bruno. "Who?" "Well, Father for one," said Bruno. "That's why he has such an impressive uniform and why everyone calls him Commandant and does whatever he says. The Fury has big things in mind for him because he's such a good soldier." "There aren't any good soldiers," repeated Shmuel. "Except Father," repeated Bruno, who was hoping that Shmuel wouldn't say that again because he didn't want to have to argue with him. Both boys stayed very quiet for a few minutes, neither one wanting to say anything he might regret. "You don't know what it's like here," said Shmuel eventually in a low voice, his words barely carrying across to Bruno. "You don't have any sisters, do you?" asked Bruno quickly, pretending he hadn't heard that because then he wouldn't have to answer. "No," said Shmuel, shaking his head. See, it's not complicated. Bruno is defensive of his Nazi father, and so he doesn't want to listen to his friend or process the things he says. Bruno, in this moment, is not naive. He is performing and protecting his own naivete. He knows his friend wants to convey information that might change the way he sees the world, and he straightforwardly says, "I don't want to think about it. Shut up. Everything is fine." Or just for one other example, let's jump forward to the end of the novel. So as you know, Bruno jumps over the concentration camp fence, but if you haven't read or don't remember the book, I genuinely think you'll find his motives pretty shocking. See, Shmuel's father recently went missing, and he's desperate to find him. For this reason, Shmuel likes the idea of Bruno hopping the fence. He wants them to look for Papa together. And just before the boys pull off their concentration camp caper, we have this passage. "You still want to help me find Papa?" asked Shmuel, and Bruno nodded. nodded quickly. Of course, he said, although finding Shmuel's papa was not as important in his mind as the prospect of exploring the world on the other side of the camp. I wouldn't let you down. When I read this passage, I literally gasped. He wants them to look for Papa together. And just before the boys pull off their concentration camp caper, we have this passage. You still want to help me find Papa, asked Shmuel, and Bruno nodded quickly. Of course, he said, although finding Shmuel's Papa was not as important in his mind as the prospect of exploring the world on the other side of the camp. I wouldn't let you down. When I read this passage, I literally gasped, because to me, it lays bare just how hollow Bruno is. His friend's father is gone, and he doesn't care because he just wants to go on some stupid adventure. And even though that's quite baffling, it also makes sense, right? Because Bruno is a character defined entirely by his own self-serving and paper-thin fantasy. It doesn't matter that his friend has a black eye or that the camps are a horrible place to live. He's not interested in what his father does or in why they moved to this place. He is fundamentally unshaken when he witnesses an elderly man beaten to death in front of him. The world to Bruno has no texture, and he seems almost hostile to those who would try to give it texture. You tell me you want to search for your presumably dead father, and that's fine for you, but I don't live in Auschwitz. I live in Outwith. Let me read you now one of the final passages in The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Bruno has put on his inmate uniform, and he's about to jump the fence. Do you know what this reminds me of? Asked Bruno, and Shmuel shook his head. What? He asked. It reminds me of grandmother, he said. You remember I told you about her, the one who died? Shmuel nodded. It reminds me of the plays she used to put on with Gretel and me, Bruno said, looking away from Shmuel as he remembered those days back in Berlin. It reminds me of how she always had the right costume for me to wear. You wear the right outfit and you feel like the person you're pretending to be, she always told me. I suppose that's what I'm doing now, isn't it? Pretending to be a person from the other side of the fence. A Jew, you mean, said Shmuel. Yes, said Bruno, shifting on his feet a little uncomfortably. That's right. This is going to come off as some contrarian hot take, I know that, but I legitimately find this passage dazzling, and that's because, despite John Boyne's intentions, it really conveys beautifully that this is a book about denialism, about the things we don't want to look at because they make us feel strange and complicit. Bruno gives his speech about how we are the costumes we wear, and it's clearly supposed to be the theme-stating moment for the novel. The differences between oppressor and oppressed is arbitrary and unjust and blah blah blah. But then Shmuel says, you're talking about Jews, right? The treatment of Jews? In this moment, it feels like Shmuel is asserting a kind of agency over the text, right? Like he's saying, no, we're not merely the costumes we put on, and the people on the other side of the fence aren't some abstract concept, the people in the striped pajamas. We're Jews, and we're in a death camp, and you could take off your costume, and you could go home. Upon hearing this, Bruno gets uncomfortable, and I just think that's so perfect. Such a great depiction of who he is and what he actually represents. In a sense, Bruno is correct. When you wear the right outfit, you do feel like the person you're pretending to be. He put on the costume of innocence and childlike wonder and blotted out everything else. And here, in the moment that costume finally comes off, his life is essentially over. There's nothing more for him to say. The book ends a few pages later. In the end, Bruno reminds me less of an empty-headed child and more of Brigitte Haas. Brigitte, like Bruno, was a child during the Second World War and moved to Auschwitz with her commandant father, Rudolf Haas. And like Bruno, she claims to have known nothing of the camps. I guess that's at least plausible in her case, though. Unlike Bruno, she did not spend a full year speaking through the fence to a young boy headed to the gas chambers. But Brigitte grew up and got old, and in 2021, she did an interview with journalist Thomas Harding, and I'll read you a passage. Later, we found out what's going on, Brigitte said. I don't really like to talk about it because I didn't like this idea, what they did, but I know it was not my dad's fault. I don't think he knew what he was getting into when he started because he was very unhappy many times, and when I talked with my mom after all this happened, she told me he was a very unhappy man. I pushed her on this, writes Harding. How could her father be an absolute wonderful person if he was responsible for the murder of over 1 million women, men, and children? Well, she stammered, that's a fact, isn't it? I said. Yeah, she conceded, but I don't see it like this. But it's true. You do agree it's true. You know it's true, I pushed. Well, it happened, she said weakly. It happened at Auschwitz, I said, to be clear. Yes, she said, her voice barely audible. And this is what I think of when I read The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, an elderly child who knows and cannot stand knowing. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas movie, directed by Mark Herman, was released in 2008, and it seems to me that its central purpose is to tell the story that John Boyne felt he was telling, a sentimental fable about friendship in a broken world. In order to accomplish that project, though, a lot of the source material's rougher edges had to be sanded away. Watching Bruno ask the emaciated Shmuel why he's skinny, only for him to avow total ignorance of his own body, is moronic and contrived, and so that scene is just not included. Watching Shmuel tell Bruno that life isn't good in the camps, only for Bruno to pretend not to have heard him, is obviously uncomfortable and off-putting, and so the film doesn't force us to stomach it. Watching Bruno betray Shmuel, allow him to be wrongly punished by a Nazi who just murdered an elderly Jewish man, only to look at his friend's black eye and ask if he got it from falling off a bike, is profoundly dark, reflects poorly on our young protagonist. And so, that doesn't happen. In the movie, upon seeing the injured Shmuel, Bruno simply feels guilty. He never asks such an absurd and insulting question.
Shmuel, I'm really sorry for what I did. We are still friends, aren't we?
Watching Shmuel tell his friend that his father is missing and that he wants help finding him, only for Bruno to think, I don't care about your tragedy, I just want to go on an adventure. It's horrible, it skeeves you out. And so, in the movie, Bruno implies no such thing. In fact, he's very upset at Shmuel's loss and wants to help him as atonement for his past betrayal. And that's much kinder, isn't it?
I really want to make up for letting you down like I did. That would have done it, wouldn't it? Helping you find your dad.
All around, the film just makes more sense, feels more streamlined. I'm not trying to say that it doesn't have any of the same surreal quality as its source material. At one point, we learn that Bruno quite literally forgot his tutor's lesson on why Jews are bad.
They're in there because they're evil. They're the enemy.
The enemy? But I think we were fighting.
They're evil, Bruno. Evil, dangerous vermin. They're the reason we lost the Great War. Haven't you been listening to anything Herr List has been telling us?
No, not really.
And that's our Bruno, right? That's our little guy. But for the most part, the film is kind of breezy and unburdened. Compared to the book, Shmuel is even less of a prominent character. He says even less about his life in the camps, and his friendship with Bruno feels even more perfunctory somehow. Bruno, for his part, is not weighed down by grating and stupid narration. We don't have to hear about Outwith or The Fury. The movie is a light 90 minutes, and so the audience can think less, and that's a good thing. Even so, I hate The Boy in the Striped Pajamas movie. I hate its desperate desire to purge its source material of anything challenging or difficult, and ultimately, the film leaves me with a more bitter taste in my mouth than the novel ever could. So for the most part, the film stays true to its source material, but there is one pretty huge change, the newfound focus on Bruno's mother. In the novel, Bruno's mom is characterized pretty sparingly. She never wanted to go to Outwith, and she grows increasingly fed up with the whole thing over the course of the novel. At one point, she tries to convince Bruno's father that she should take the kids back to Berlin, and they have this interaction. "And what will people think," asked father, "if I permit you and the children to return to Berlin without me? They will ask questions about my commitment to the work here." "Work?" shouted mother. "You call this work?" So, while she doesn't seem to like living next to the Holocaust, it's not a point of emphasis, and we never really learn what she thinks of the final solution. In the film, though, it's a whole different story. Now, Bruno's mother seems to outright hate Nazi ideology. She doesn't like the things that Bruno is learning from his tutor, and she expresses that multiple times.
Does he usually teach children as young as Gretel and Bruno?
I believe so. Why?
Well, do we know what he's teaching them? Gretel seems to have become so...
They're being taught what all children are being taught at the moment. They mustn't get left behind.
Come on.
What's more, for most of the film, she is totally ignorant to the nature of the death camps, and when she does discover the truth, she flips out.
How can you...
Because I'm a soldier. Soldiers fight wars.
That isn't war!
It's a part of it. It's a vital part of it. The fatherland we all desire, all of us, you included, cannot be achieved without work such as this. Elsa. Elsa.
Get away from me! Get away from me!
Toward the end, there's this one truly groan-worthy scene where we see her flopping on a tire swing, as though she's literally gone mad because of this knowledge. Bruno's family lives very close to Auschwitz. His mother would be able to see the smoke rising from the chimneys and hear the sounds coming from the camp and smell the smells of burning bodies. Even in Brigitte Haas's bleary-eyed and overly charitable vision of her childhood, she felt her mother knew the truth. I'm sure my mom knew what was going on in the camp. She was very sad about it, but she couldn't help. She just tried to be nice with the children and with my father. And that makes sense, you know, because she was an adult in Nazi Germany who was married to the commandant of a death camp. And yet here, her analog swings from a tree branch, emptied out by the news. You can feel in this creative shift the film's desire to make everything clean and tidy. It's not that Bruno is foolish or ignorant or callous. No, we wouldn't want that. Instead, the entire world is blinkered to the Holocaust. Nobody can know anything because if they did, well, they'd lose their minds. I mean, nobody could actually accept the Holocaust, could they? In this way, the original book, this strange, difficult, and malevolent thing, is replaced with meaningless, overpuffed drivel, a film as hollow and false as the protagonist it wants us to love. Anyway, that's the end of the video, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I mean, I was a huge fan of making this one. This is one of my favorite videos I've made in quite a while, to be honest with you. I had so much fun drawing all the little pickies. I'm just here to sort of sit back and relax while the Patreon credits scroll by. Thank you to my patrons, but I just figured I would
Truman Capote's In Cold Blood is often cited as the birth of the modern true crime genre. It was a smash hit, catapulting Capote's career and opening the door to what is now a landscape of endless videos, podcasts, and retellings of true crime events. And looking back at it with a modern lens, we can see that Capote's novel also highlights many of the modern problematic aspects of the genre as well, from the way that Capote financially benefited from other people's trauma to Capote's many inaccuracies in recounting the story, especially when it comes to recounting how the cops handled the investigation.
The Kansas Bureau of Investigation waited 5 days before following up on
many of the modern problematic aspects of the Truman Capote's In Cold Blood is often cited as the birth of the modern true crime genre. It was a smash hit, catapulting Capote's career and opening the door to what is now a landscape of endless videos, podcasts, and retellings of true crime events. And looking back at it with a modern lens, we can see that Capote's novel also highlights many of the modern problematic aspects of the genre as well, from the way that Capote financially benefited from other people's trauma to Capote's many inaccuracies in recounting the story, especially when it comes to recounting how the cops handled the investigation.
The Kansas Bureau of Investigation waited 5 days before following up on what turned out to be the crucial lead in the case, rather than doing so immediately as Capote wrote in his novel. This is not a trivial matter because if the KBI had acted quicker, the killers, Perry Smith and Dick Hickok, may not have made it to Florida, where they possibly committed 4 additional murders of a husband and wife and their 2 young children.
Hello, my name is Maggie, and I listen to true crime. Maggie, why do you do this clearly bad thing? And good question. I don't really know. It probably started during the pandemic when I needed endless hours of something, and I've always loved nonfiction. I do think truth is oftentimes stranger than fiction, and true crime stories are no exception. But I think what really demanded my attention and made my ears perk up was how often true crime involves an open discussion about the failures of policing in these cases. I started to recognize creators who, when I first started watching their videos, it felt like they were giving cops the benefit of the doubt. But over time, they've almost like radicalized themselves because of how egregiously and how often police mess up a case, purposefully sabotage an investigation, or are even sometimes the killers themselves. If the beginning of this genre was Truman Capote hand-waving the failures of law enforcement, then we have come a very long way, my friends. And as somebody who studies media and the effects that it has on people and society, I just found that progression fascinating. I first thought this video would be, a deep dive on true crime channels and making a big catalog of videos to analyze how often true crime stories feature good police work and how often they cited a problem with the police's investigation. But I eventually had to stop because it was practically all of them. All of them had police fucking up the case. There was no point in keeping track. Police losing evidence. Police disrespecting grieving family members. Police letting a serial killer go because he just seemed like a nice guy. Police ignoring women who repeatedly asked for help. Police ignoring indigenous communities when repeatedly asking for help. Police engaging in cover-ups. Police themselves being the ones who commit murder. And in the rare case where cops actually did do their job, the hosts were genuinely surprised. It is true that the most compelling true crime stories often have some remarkable element to them, and often that means a police investigation that completely messes up a quest for justice. But true crime stories are just like the exception, right? I mean, in most cases go smoothly, and that's why we don't hear about them. Right? Right now, in the United States, if someone murdered you, let's say, there's a 50-50 chance of the perpetrator being apprehended. A real glass half full, half you got away with murder situation. And clearance rates for the police have been in a steady decline for the past 50 years. And police funding steadily increasing. And this is all despite crime rates being at an all-time low. Crime is at an all-time low. Police funding is at an all-time high. They're becoming less effective with more time and resources. Now, I'm pointing this all out because, if you haven't noticed, there's a real policing problem in the United States. And that was before the police were being used to illegally brutalize and incarcerate our neighbors. If Truman Capote represents the classic problems of true crime coverage, like profiting off tragedy, now we also have new, modern problems with the true crime genre. If you do a cursory flip through true crime YouTube channels, you see a lot of lazy slop. It's easy AI clicks, it's highly emotional, very easy algorithm bait if your only goal is money. You'll be listening to a true crime podcast and hear a commercial for a home security system, which at best feels like emotional manipulation. But for the most part, I'm not going to make these criticisms the main focus of this essay because we already have a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to link other videos that I recommend that cover this topic very, very well. My friend Princess has not one, but 2 videos on the ethical nature of true crime. Lindsay Ellis just put out a video on Nebula about police body cam footage content that I highly recommend. So, while the ethical nature of true crime is murky at best, there are creators who have tried to correct many of the problematic aspects of the genre from the past and try to engage in best practices. Some creators highlight stories of missing Jane or John Does who are still in need of identification instead of famous cases that have been oversaturated in the genre. Some cover cases that are older instead of breaking news to avoid cases currently in the public eye. Some frequently share stories about Indigenous and other vulnerable communities because they receive less coverage from mainstream news outlets. There are passionate people in the community who are dedicated to making things better. But so often in these cases, the very people whose job it is to make things better are the reason the case is being covered years later on a podcast in the first place. If you've watched any amount of true crime videos, then what you're about to hear won't come as a surprise.
We have discussed many cases here on my channel where it is apparent, it is evident, plain as day, that a department, a group of law enforcement, is putting in no time or effort into a case.
Understandably, his family has expressed extreme frustration with the police, stating that 98% of the search effort was carried out by the family, which obviously is very frustrating.
I have such a serious issue with how the authorities handled this situation. She talked to police officers about his behavior. She talked about how she didn't feel safe.
Doesn't seem like the police cared to learn as much as they could about Mercedes' life leading up to her murder.
Policing has been a topic of discussion in activists and civil rights communities since the inception of the police. But that has me wondering, where does the true crime community fit into this discussion? Why are police seemingly and statistically so inept? Why do we see the same mistakes happen again and again in police work? And in the act of researching and telling and listening to these stories, are creators and audiences learning to distrust the police, who seemingly fuck up investigations week after week?
It's not just me asking this question. I see all the time comments, viral posts asking why aren't more true crime heads anti-cop? Well,
like I mentioned before, we're not exactly starting on an even playing field. Since the beginning, true crime has gone hand in hand with police department propaganda. Every great story needs an easily identifiable villain and a hero, and if the criminal is the villain, then that makes the cop de facto the hero. It's easy to take for granted how much media influences our idea of the world, but law enforcement surely knows how important it is. The police spend tens of millions of dollars every year in PR departments, shaping their public image, sometimes even rewriting history entirely. They spend so much money creating relationships with news outlets and politicians and tech companies to cast their actions in a favorable light. But they don't exactly have that same relationship with independent true crime YouTube channels, which is probably why it's easier to stumble upon someone with a messy bun angry at the police for once again lying to a family and saying that they need to wait 24 hours before reporting their loved one missing. 2 years ago, a huge true crime channel did a documentary about Jessica Easterly, a woman who went missing in 2019, and they did not pull any punches, calling out local law enforcement for not investigating the main suspect, Jessica's ex-husband.
New Orleans was Jessica's home, and the New Orleans Police Department, who swore to serve and protect her, utterly failed her. They failed to investigate, they failed to care, and failed to even try to solve her murder.
But this is just one instance. I mean, with how popular true crime is, I wondered, is there an overwhelming push from the true crime community to change the way that policing is done in the United States? Is there a true crime to ACAB pipeline? No, not really. But there should be. And there could be. If there's one thing I have learned from listening to true crime, it is that if you see something, you need to say something. So, I will be that girly who helps make the connection between police failings as depicted in the true crime genre and the structural failings of policing in our society. To help with this investigation, I did what any good detective would do. I talked to the experts. Throughout the video, we'll hear from Alec Karakatsanis, civil rights lawyer and author of the book Copaganda.
The way that the police market themselves, they understand that nobody thinks that the police are a solution to interpersonal violence among people who know each other. They want to market violence as committed by all these strangers and immigrants and poor people and people of color, because those are the people that the police spend all their money cracking down on.
And for a layman's perspective, Brandon Sutton, political commentator and recent true crime enthusiast.
The true crime genre makes people believe, and this is not incorrect, that police don't work. Now, a lot of people, because it's America, think that there's like a punitive reason for that. Like the crime is not punished harshly enough. Like the judges aren't allowed to sentence people to death for stealing a loaf of bread. Cops are ineffective. People know that. They just don't know what the solution is because they've been fed a lot of like conservative propaganda about what makes policing effective.
I'll also have a reading list and bibliography below. You can peruse to your heart's delight. But Alex Copaganda and The End of Policing by Alex S. Vitale, who's now on Zoran's transition team, were particularly helpful. One last caveat, I am not necessarily endorsing any true crime creator that we talk about or feature. And now, just like any Rian Johnson queer detective, which is to say any Rian Johnson detective, we need to go back to the beginning of the story. As we mentioned, In Cold Blood kicked off the now widely recognized true crime genre, and in it, Capote bent the truth to cast the police in a more favorable light. This is what's known as copaganda. That is, portraying the actions of law enforcement as only positive, just, and effective in capturing the criminal in question. Copaganda has a long history in the world of true crime, and there are many reasons why. Historically, true crime narratives are overwhelmingly told from the perspective of the detectives, taking the audience along for the ride as they investigate. It's a detective's job to build a narrative around the criminal in order to secure a conviction from a jury.
So now I get out my puzzle pieces and I start figuring out, okay, how do I make it so you look like a monster?
That gives writers a pre-crafted narrative to rely on when recounting the story in a podcast, novel, or film. Not to mention, many journalists feel the need to soften the image of the police in their reporting in order to keep their relationship with law enforcement intact for future leads and information.
Because what police actually do and the reasons for it is so different from what they tell us that their goals are, they have to have incredibly powerful propaganda operations. For example, when the Chicago police killed teenager Laquan McDonald over 10 years ago, they had 4 full-time public relations officers whose job was to kind of manipulate the news. And now, as you and I are talking, they have over 50 full-time public relations people. And this is not just unique to Chicago. The Los Angeles sheriff has 42 himself. The NYPD has almost 90. Virtually any time you see a news story in local or national news about any of these issues, there's a policing public relations team behind it. They are affecting what you even think of as news. Of all the millions of things that happened the night before, which 12 to 13 of them is your local news going to tell you about? Well, I guarantee you there's police bringing those stories to your local news in a way that, like, teachers unions and nurses and building inspectors, they don't have public relations teams that can bring us those really important stories. So the news is really heavily skewed to what the police want us to see.
On top of that, the movie industry used to have literal regulations against portraying the cops in a negative light. In his article, Pre-Code Hollywood, author Mick LaSalle describes the guidelines laid out by the most famous of these regulations, the Hays Code.
Authority could not be held up to ridicule. In the case of politicians, police, and judges, they could, under some circumstances, be movie villains, so long as it was clear that they were bad apples and not representative of their institutions. Under this code, movies were to be sermons. Worse than that, they were to be deceitful sermons, presenting an untrue vision of life for propagandistic purposes.
As the Hays Code ended in the late 60s, we started seeing more nuanced and critical examinations of the role that police play in our society.
The station's been letting the cops and the FBI study our footage.
Films like Serpico and Justice for All and Across 110th Street. This, of course, coincided with the civil rights movement, as people saw with their own eyes the ways in which cops engaged in violence against the communities they were supposedly charged with protecting. And films portraying the police as violent and the justice system as corrupt gained attention, notoriety, and acclaim.
I got an insane judge who likes to beat the shit out of women. You're supposed to stand for something. You're supposed to protect people, but instead you fucking murder them.
But even without the Hays Code, the industry still produces tons and tons of pro-cop propaganda.
cop shows, like procedural dramas, things like that, they're so ubiquitous. It's very difficult to like turn on a television if you have like a television that has channels without seeing something in the, SVU, Law and Order type genre.
Another extremely important installment in the true crime genre is the 1988 documentary The Thin Blue Line. Billed as a non-fiction feature film invoking comparisons to Truman Capote's non-fiction novel In Cold Blood, Errol Morris's documentary tells the story of a man, Randall Ray Adams, who was wrongly convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of a Texas cop. The thin blue line of the title refers to the idea that the police are the line that separates civilized society from a world of chaos, murder, and anarchy. The documentary utilized extensive reenactments of the crime, as well as detailed diagrams of the scene to show how Adams could not have committed the murder. Not only that, but Morris even got the real culprit, David Ray Harris, to admit on tape that he was guilty. The film got Adams released from prison and forced 3 witnesses to admit that they lied when they had identified him as the perpetrator. The extensive reenactments were not only a turning point in how documentary film was produced and perceived, but also in opening up the public to be more skeptical of the police and the criminal justice system. Even though the film was successful by documentary standards, The Thin Blue Line's reach was limited by the simple fact that documentaries weren't big business at the time. On the other hand, mainstream shows like Cops, debuting a year later, offered high-energy, titillating, extremely pro-police perspectives, which presented themselves as true depictions of police and criminals. And of course, Cops was wildly successful, drowning out any discussion that The Thin Blue Line was attempting to have. The podcast, Running from Cops, did a fantastic job documenting how the show Cops changed the way that people perceive law enforcement. Not only did they uncover a multitude of instances in which people filmed on the show never gave permission for the use of their image or likeness, but how the show put immense pressure on cops to instigate and fabricate instances worthy of a TV show, including, but not limited to, planting evidence and framing civilians. Now, much like during the civil rights movement, we have seen the brutality of police officers with our own eyes, thanks to community efforts like the Black Lives Matter movement and the more recent ICE Watch volunteers. Technology like body cams were supposed to help keep law enforcement accountable, but have actually captured law enforcement's unbridled violence against our community's most vulnerable. We are in an age where we are questioning all of the institutions around us. We are in an age of review, finding out what is actually working for society, and if not, why. By the time I watched The Thin Blue Line in college around 2013, it seemed so quaint. Of course the cops framed someone instead of solving the case. This really made waves. As society has evolved, so has the true crime content that comes with it. In the past, true crime has often glamorized the perpetrators, like how Truman Capote befriended Perry Smith while writing In Cold Blood. Now, true crime, at its best, is much more victim-focused, as a response to valid criticism about a genre that was often glorifying the perpetrators. Since most YouTubers work independently, many are not beholden to the same relationships or sway from powerful law enforcement PR teams. After conducting a shit ton of research, I've compiled many of the most notable true crime cases and put them into 3 categories. Cases where the cops were incompetent, cases where the cops were biased, and cases where the cops were the literal perpetrator. As we mentioned, the cases, we'll be discussing the reasons police so often fail families searching for their loved ones, women asking for safety, and marginalized communities demanding to be heard. And hopefully, by the end, we'll have an answer for the armchair detective asking themselves, why hasn't this case been solved? So, let's get to the bottom of this.
In true crime, we often see cases of ignorance of authorities and the lack of movement on cases. This one is a prime example of no matter how loud the public screams, sometimes no one in power will listen.
What happens when something does go wrong and you go to these said law enforcement agencies multiple times, but you are never taken seriously?
In the beginning, the police were basically uninterested in investigating Damien's disappearance. Seems like they truly did not give a fuck.
And how have police not tracked down her killer after 14 years?
And then the police are like, actually, we can't hand the sweater over because we lost it. When we should have tested them back then.
police officers who are so inept end up at police departments? Well, firstly, when a person becomes a police officer, extremely little of their day-to-day work actually involves investigation.
Felony arrests of any kind are a rarity with uniformed officers, with most making no more than one per year.
Secondly, most police resources don't go towards investigations or anything that remotely helps solve cases. Money goes to things that will make the police department more money. Things like low-level drug busts and parking enforcement.
The bulk of police officers work in patrol. They take reports, engage in random patrol, address parking and driving violations and noise complaints, issue tickets, and make misdemeanor arrests for drinking in public, possession of small amount of drugs, or the vague, disorderly conduct.
When you get a parking ticket for being a minute over and you yell, "Don't you have anything better to do?" The answer is yes, obviously, but this is what makes money, and in turn guarantees more funding for the police department. Local governments are often funded by massive ticket writing campaigns. And if you're not funneling money into the local government, it won't be funded back into the police department for retirements and pay raises. There's not much incentive for the police to prevent a crime, hence why they'll hand a victim back to the perpetrator or ignore a woman's 14 calls for help. There's no reward for stopping a crime from happening.
At every single level in the police bureaucracy, they're not hiring for or training for or implementing intelligent processes for solving crime. And that's why the clearance rates in really serious crimes have gone way, way down, even though police budgets have gone way, way up in the last 30 years. Never underestimate how incompetent most large government bureaucracies are, particularly the police. Extraordinarily, it's basically like flushing money down the toilet.
The police rely on data to justify their jobs to the community. There's nothing that keeps track of crimes prevented. They rely on data that shows people arrested, regardless if they are actually guilty or not, or citations written, regardless whether those tickets are later contested or not, because those are the numbers they can use to justify and argue their importance to the community, and ultimately, those who set the police budget.
What is being presented to a lot of people is not a crime prevention strategy or a strategy to make society safer. It's a strategy to funnel money to police departments, to military industrial complex, and a cycle that ultimately just ends up with less and less for the resources in communities that would actually prevent crimes from happening in favor of putting them into like the pockets of people who ultimately want to imprison people.
All of this to say, not only do police departments not really have an incentive to prevent crime, but actually they're incentivized to make crime rates go up. Higher crime rates means they get to justify bigger budgets and more officers, despite research that proves throwing more money at